Chapter 91. Tongning looked at Mo Ting as her heart turned sour. A man like Mo Ting could have found himself a virtuous and beautiful wife who wouldn't cause him any trouble, wouldn't make him worry and wouldn't get into conflict with Hai Rui because of her. But she had already met him. In this lifetime, there was no way she was going to let go. So, she lowered her head and looked at Mo Ting's right hand as she firmly squeezed her fingers between his fingers, feeling the warmth of his heart. In times of adversity, people become especially fragile. But, as long as I can do it, I will do it for you. Even if I can't, I won't give up so easily. After hearing this, Tongning laughed and cried at the same time. She couldn't help but tear up. In this world, only she knew how good Mo Ting was to her. Mo Ting was afraid she would cry, but this little woman loved to cry. So, all he could do was gently stroke her hair as a form of silent encouragement and comfort. Seeing the scene in front of her, Long Jie didn't want to break the warm atmosphere between the couple. However, Han Yufan had already made over 10 phone calls. After hesitating for a while, Long Jie handed the phone to Tongning. Tongning calmed herself down before picking up Han Yufan's phone. "What is it?" On the other side of the phone there was a long period of silence. Tongning had no patience. Just as she was about to hang up, Han Yufan finally spoke. "Tongning, I've been kicked out of the board of directors." "That's what you should do," Tongning replied calmly. "The company is facing bankruptcy and my house and car are about to be confiscated by the court. I have nowhere else to go. I plan to go overseas, but I want to take you with me. I've already seen your statement, but it's useless. It's just a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. You won't be able to clear your name." Han Yufan hurriedly said a bunch of things. From the looks of it, he had suffered a crushing defeat. There was no turning back this time. "Tongning, as long as you come with me, I won't hold it against you for going behind my back to look for that jerk. Let's go back to how we were before and be happy. I know you still love me. Otherwise, you wouldn't stay by Tiany's side and refuse to leave. Come back." Hearing this, Tongning revealed a never-before-seen expression of mockery and ridicule. She wanted to know how Han Yufan could still be so shameless and say something like this. So, after a few seconds of silence, her voice was a lot colder than before. "The reason I stayed at Tiany was never because I still love you, it was because I wanted to see you suffer a fate worse than death. However, I never imagined, even though I wasn't as cruel as Mo Yuro, she was able to destroy herself and ruin your reputation. Han Yufan, go to hell by yourself. I won't accompany you, and no one will either." As soon as Tongning finished speaking, Han Yufan was about to reply when Mo Ting suddenly whispered into Tongning's ear, "I'm going to the study room to take care of something." Tongning was a little surprised. She quickly understood, Mo Ting had no intention of hiding the truth from Han Yufan. So, she nodded her head gently and reminded, "Don't turn on the air conditioning." "All right." Mo Ting nodded. Although he entered the study room without any worries, he still made a phone call to Lu Che. "Send someone to keep an eye on Han Yufan. Don't let him run around and don't let him come into contact with the media." "Yes, President." After putting down the phone, Mo Ting flipped through the documents beside him like nothing had happened. The man with the surname Han had hurt Tongning so many times. Did he really think he could just walk away like that? On the other end of the phone, Han Yufan heard the man's voice on the other end of the phone. Hearing the intimate conversation between the two, his voice suddenly turned cold, just like when he was betrayed by Mo Yuro. "Who was that man just now?" "It seems it has nothing to do with you," Tongning replied calmly. "Tongning," Han Yufan yelled angrily, "tell me, did you really sleep with Li Yu? Are you living with another man? How can you be so shameless?" "Han Yufan, don't forget that we're no longer in a relationship. Who I'm with is none of your business. We were once engaged. I am already married." Tongning suddenly interrupted Han Yufan. She used this explosive piece of news to make Han Yufan speechless. "From now on, my matters have nothing to do with you." "Married? Tongning, are you still lying to me? Where are you going to get married? Do you think with the way you are right now, who would dare to marry you?" Han Yufan yelled hysterically. Rather than saying he didn't believe her, it was more accurate to say he was just lying to himself. However, on the other end of the phone, Han Yufan was left speechless. So, you are really married? Han Yufan wiped his face and suddenly felt as if a sharp knife had pierced his heart. The pain in that instant made it difficult for him to breathe. It shouldn't be like this. He had always loved Mo Yuro and had never felt anything for her. But, suddenly hearing that Tongning had married someone else, Han Yufan felt like his soul had been sucked out of his body, leaving behind an empty shell. No, it can't be like this. How could this be? Tongning had always been his tail. Tongning had done everything for him. How could she belong to someone else? In Han Yufan's heart, he had always had a sweet dream. He thought, no matter how much he abused or hurt Tongning, all he had to do was crook his finger and Tongning would return to his side. She was simply acting out of spite. But now, Tongning was saying she was already married. Han Yufan suddenly laughed out loud, but he did not notice there were tears in the corners of his eyes. Tongning, would you rather marry an old man than reconcile with me? Don't you know how disgusting you are? Tongning's voice was a lot colder than before. In Han Yufan's heart, no matter what she did, she was always an evil person. Towards her, he had always been her boss. He had never trusted or respected her. Then, tell me, who are you married to? Although Mo Ting had already decided to announce their relationship in front of Han Yufan, Tongning didn't want to make the decision on her own. So, she gently pushed open the study room door and held onto her phone as she asked Mo Ting, Han Yufan really wants to know who you are. Mo Ting glanced at Tongning's phone. His chestnut-colored eyes glowed as he opened his arms and invited Tongning to sit on top of him. After quite some time, he finally replied, in that case, let's meet up. I will send someone to pick him up and meet me. With Mo Ting's status, could Han Yufan meet up with him whenever he wanted? He wasn't worthy. Chapter 92. The bed-climbing scandal at Tianyi had become too big of a deal. Although Tongning had responded in time with PR, she couldn't cooperate with the other people involved. With the complicated background of the entertainment industry, a statement like this was quickly drowned out by public opinion and was not worth mentioning at all. Tianyi Entertainment released a short apology letter, but the letter was completely confusing. Not only did it not redeem the company's image, it even caused the scandal to escalate further and further. At the same time, the few runway shows that Tongning was currently in negotiations with were replaced by the organizers because of the bed-climbing scandal. As a result, the endorsement deals that they had originally agreed to were all lost. Tongning, right? Aya, we don't dare to use you anymore. I'm so sorry, we've already replaced someone else. Tongning, I don't think your image fits with us. I'm sorry, we've replaced someone else. You've already bed-climbed, why are you still filming a commercial? These families were still considered polite, and some of them even cursed out loud. Long Jie put down her phone and looked at Tongning helplessly. However, Tongning gently patted her on the shoulder. It's fine. Don't tell Mo Ting about this. Do you think Big Boss doesn't know? Long Jie sighed. She understood that this industry was all about fame and fortune, so it was scary to be realistic. I'll continue to call, as long as there's a sliver of hope. After speaking, Long Jie made another call. Surprisingly, the other party agreed to let Tongning meet them for a meeting. But, when Tongning actually showed up, the other party simply asked if she wanted to be a nude model. You guys are too insulting. You've done even more despicable things, now you want to talk about dignity. The man looked at Tongning with disdain and mockery in his eyes. Tongning did not say a word. She simply stared intently at the man's name tag and etched it into her mind. The man was obviously intimidated by Tongning's cold gaze as a thin layer of sweat formed on his smooth forehead. Long Jie, go check with the paparazzi and see if there are any reporters that are familiar with Li Yu, Tongning instructed on the way home. On the way home, Tongning suddenly reminded Long Jie. After thinking for a moment, she continued, looking at the contents of the agreement, the first condition is for him to release Mo Yuro. That is to say, Han Yufan already knew about Mo Yuro and Li Yu's relationship. But when did you find out? On Han Yufan's birthday. Tongning carefully recalled the phone call Han Yufan made to her. That day was also the first time Han Yufan asked her to return to his side. Long Jie, go to Tianyi and look for Han Yufan's secretary. She might know something about what happened that day. We have to follow Lee Yu's lead as well. At the award ceremony, I told Mo Euro that we were even. I originally planned to let her off the hook, but who would have thought she wouldn't let it go? Since she wants to destroy herself, then we should help her. Let Han Yufan and Lee Yu be her companions, Tongning. Long Jie was a little surprised. I'm sorry. My mind has been in a mess for the past 2 days. I almost forgot that this is a circle where you have to rely on your own strength. That man's mockery just now was like a wake-up call to me. If I don't work hard, everything will return to the beginning, or even worse. It turns out, in other people's eyes, I can only be a nude model. Long Jie looked at Tongning. Her eyes were bright and calm. It was like the confusion and lack of confidence from the past 2 days had been completely dispelled. If she fell, she could just get back up. If worst came to worst, she would just have to start all over again. Online, there were all sorts of arguments. For example, the agreement was signed not long after the award ceremony, so there was no way Lee Yu would have worked with the judges to give Tongning the award. Also, just because the agreement was signed at this time, it didn't mean Tongning and Lee Yu had never interacted before. The most direct evidence was the fact they sat next to each other at the Bright Night Gala and walked the red carpet together. Tongning glanced at the comments, but she didn't care as much as she did at the beginning. Because she knew that she would make the angry passers-by feel ashamed for the words they said. After returning to Hyatt Regency, Lu Che was waiting for Tongning at the entrance. "Madam, the president asked me to pick you up. Are you going to Hai Rui?" "No, he wants to have lunch with you." When Han Yufan was escorted to the restaurant, Tongning was the only one in the lobby. Han Yufan looked at how out of place he was in the restaurant and realized Tongning was actually comfortable and relaxed in this environment. The woman that once stood by his side was now elegant and dignified. The woman that he once looked down on was now a dazzling pearl that he could no longer touch. "You're here." Tongning glanced at him calmly. "Of course I'm here to see who your new husband is. I never thought you would do something so stupid in a moment of anger." Tongning lifted her head and looked at Han Yufan's serious expression. She couldn't help but laugh. "Han Yufan, you're thinking too highly of yourself. Could he really be so magnanimous and put up with all the rumors going around? Even I can't help but suspect you've slept with Lee Yu." "I refuse to believe he wouldn't have any reaction." "You don't deserve to be compared to him," Tongning replied coldly. "Han Yufan, do you know what I've been thinking about ever since I married him? I've been thinking about the time I spent with you. Although it's already happened and I don't care about it, I still feel a lot of regret. Even if you regret it, you can't erase it." Tongning's lips twitched. She originally wanted to say something, but at the entrance of the restaurant, a black figure slowly walked in. Han Yufan recognized who it was. It was the CEO of Hai Rui Entertainment. He never expected to bump into Mo Ting at a place like this. He was well aware of the difference between them. Mo Ting could crush him with a flick of his finger. On top of that, Han Ruoxue had previously offended Hai Rui. Han Yufan lowered his head and quickly avoided the man's gaze. Even he didn't know why. So, Tongning noticed a sense of inferiority in him. Han Yufan pretended to look at Tongning and pretended to be embarrassed. However, Tongning sneered on the inside as she welcomed Mo Ting with a smile. "I've ordered your favorite steak." Under Han Yufan's shocked gaze, Mo Ting approached the couple. He leaned over and placed a kiss on Tongning's forehead before sitting down beside her. "Have you waited long?" "I just arrived. From now on, I'll try to arrive earlier than you." Mo Ting patted Tongning on the head apologetically. Meanwhile, Han Yufan wanted to find a hole to hide in. Compared to Tongning's nobility, he felt like a poor and disgusting beggar. Chapter 93. In fact, calling him a beggar wasn't even enough to describe the difference between them. No, he couldn't accept it. How could Tongning marry Mo Ting? How could the Tongning he didn't want marry the most mysterious and powerful man in the entertainment industry? This couldn't be real. He must be dreaming. After comforting Tongning, Mo Ting finally lifted his head and looked at Han Yufan. His sharp and cold eyes were like an eagle looking at its prey. His sexy and full lips gently moved, It seems Mr. Han isn't used to the food here, huh? His deep and rich voice was so low that it made one's heart tremble. Han Yufan felt a chill run down his spine as his throat moved nervously. Especially after hearing Mo Ting's icy words, he directly fell to the ground. His inexperienced expression made the surrounding waiters hold back their laughter. You guys enjoy your meal. I'll leave first. Han Yufan wanted to get up from the ground, but... Leave? Mo Ting lazily lifted his eyelids. Perhaps it was as if he repeated the word questioningly. Where are you going? Hearing Mo Ting's voice, the waiters at the door immediately blocked the exit. Obviously, from the moment Han Yufan stepped in, he no longer had the right to leave. Didn't Mr. Han want to see me? Why do you want to leave before we even finished our conversation? Mo Ting elegantly cut into the steak in front of him as he glanced at Han Yufan. After cutting up the steak, he thoughtfully placed it in front of Tongning. Han Yufan sat on the ground trembling. He knew he had no way of resisting Mo Ting. It was like throwing an egg against a rock. I can step out and clarify for Tongning, clarify that she didn't climb into his bed. Han Yufan thought this was the result Mo Ting wanted and the main reason he agreed to see him. However, Mo Ting simply curved his lips. Did you think Tongning still needs you to clarify? Mo Ting put down his knife and fork and looked at Han Yufan. She hasn't needed it for a long time. With me around, you are nothing. Han Yufan froze. He suddenly couldn't guess Mo Ting's motive. Since Mo Ting didn't arrange this meeting for him to clarify for Tongning, then what was his motive? Was he simply here to humiliate him? Or did he want to see how thoroughly he had lost and how pathetic he looked? President Mo, then, what exactly do you want to do with me? Han Yufan was too nervous. He was so nervous that even though Mo Ting was merely asking him a question, Han Yufan could sense danger in his voice. He felt like his pride had been mercilessly trampled on by Mo Ting. You will have to ask my wife about that. Mo Ting turned his head and handed the initiative to Tongning. His tone was completely different from when he spoke to Han Yufan. It was doting and gentle. Han Yufan instantly understood Mo Ting's motive. He was taking revenge for Tongning. Han Yufan lifted his head and looked at Tongning. Looking at this woman who appeared to be aloof from worldly affairs, yet had secretly become the wife of a big boss, Han Yufan felt a sense of ridicule and coldness in his heart. It was as if he was saying, all men are the same. For someone of Mo Ting's status, he can have anything he wants. How long would he care about you? Tongning could see the mockery in Han Yufan's eyes, but she didn't mind. Tongning, you've already turned me into a joke. What else do you want? Just tell me. I never expected you to be so calculative. Do you want to know when Mo Ting and I are getting married? August 19th, Tongning interrupted coldly. As soon as Han Yufan heard this, he looked into Tongning's eyes in surprise. August 19th. That was the day he was supposed to marry Tongning. It was also the day he abandoned Tongning and got together with Mo Euro. He even asked Tongning to be Mo Euro's body double and replace her at the Crown Star show. Then why didn't you lend it to me? Borrow Mo Ting's hand to get revenge on you? Tongning asked. Her words sounded a little ridiculous, because I didn't want to dirty Mo Ting's hands. After hearing Tongning's words, a chill rose from Han Yufan's heart and quickly spread throughout his body. All Tongning had to do was announce her relationship with Mo Ting. In the entire entertainment industry, who would dare to look down on her? But Tongning still endured so many misunderstandings and torment to get to where she was today. She could rely on Mo Ting. But she didn't do so. Why? So, you really didn't rely on dirty methods to get to where you are today? Not everyone is like you and Mo Euro. Han Yufan, 3 years ago, I was Beijing's top model. 3 years later, I will still be the top model. I will prove it to everyone. Of course, that includes you. Hearing Tongning's words, Han Yufan suddenly laughed out loud. His laughter was so fake that even he felt it was a little fake. Do you dare to say that those that know your husband is President Mo didn't give you any face? Only you know. Tongning looked at Han Yufan indifferently and emphasized, currently, only you know of our relationship. Han Yufan looked at Tongning in shock. In the end, he lowered his head in defeat, I can't believe there's someone like you in this world. You have such good resources but you don't use them. I can't believe there's someone like you, haha. In this world, not all relationships are used. For example, the relationship I once had with you and from now on with Mo Ting, I can rely on my own abilities to get what I want. I can rely on my own hard work to get back to where I once was. Perhaps to you, these are all resources. But to me, the relationship between Mo Ting and I is not one that is used. This is something you will never understand. At this moment, Han Yufan felt his heart was bleeding. He once had Tongning's sincerity, but he had treated her care as a benefit, a condition, and a tool for business. It turned out, without him, Tongning could live a better life. She could even live a more exciting life. Marry whomever she wants. The CEO of Hai Rui Entertainment. Even if he worked hard for 10 lifetimes, he would never be able to reach Mo Ting's level. How could he be so stupid to be fooled by Mo Euro? If he hadn't betrayed Tongning, would everything have been different? I once thought of a million ways to torture you, but I never thought Mo Euro would use the most vicious method. Han Yufan, you finally have nothing left. I don't have any other requests, nor do I have any interest in stepping on a fallen dog. I still want to continue living my life because you are nothing. So, Han Yufan, get lost. Tongning lifted her head, her eyes were colder than before. From now on, don't appear in any corner of Beijing and don't ever appear in front of me. Chapter 94. Get lost. Hearing this word, Han Yufan's body froze. Tongning had never spoken to him in such a condescending manner before. In fact, she even spoke to him in a way that he would never be able to reach in his entire life. Han Yufan felt like a clown. He had revealed his ugliest side in front of Tongning, yet he was still proud of himself and thought he was invincible. Worst of all, he had once called Tongning a slut. Yet, these two words were like a burning slap to his own face. Han Yufan wanted to say something else, but seeing Mo Ting and Tongning's tightly intertwined hands, he opened his mouth, but no words came out. All he could do was crawl up from the floor and leave the luxurious restaurant in front of everyone's mocking gazes. Afterwards, he hid in the shadows and punched the wall. But, no matter how much he regretted it, there was no turning back. Not only had his reputation been destroyed, he had also lost his pride. This was the price of having an affair. This was the price of having an affair. This was his choice, but retribution was always behind him. Not long after, Mo Ting and Tongning also left the restaurant. Han Yufan held back for a moment before he chased after them. However, he was stopped by Lu Che. Haven't you given up yet? That's right, Tongning and Mo Ting were already husband and wife. What was the point of doing this? Tongning was already married to the best man in Beijing. This man could give her everything she wanted. I simply want to compensate Tongning with something, no matter what it is. No need, Lu Che replied coldly. With our president's protection, it's impossible for the madam to suffer. Don't compare yourself to our president. No. Lu Che. Tongning overheard the conversation between Han Yufan and Lu Che, so she called Lu Che over. After listening to their instructions, Lu Che turned to Han Yufan and asked, "The madam wants to know when you discovered Mo Euro and Li Yu were having an affair." Champagne Hotel, room 3029. I caught them in bed together. The hotel has surveillance cameras. Thank you, Tongning said as she closed the car door. She did not look at Han Yufan again, nor did she turn around. His words of thanks made Han Yufan feel as if he had been redeemed, and he felt a lot more at ease. Why did he have to go this far to understand how good Tongning was? Tongning. Tongning, Han Yufan watched as Mo Ting's sports car drove off. His eyes followed the car as it sped away. However, he was in complete despair. He knew he had no way of snatching Tongning back from Mo Ting. In reality, the reason why Tongning thanked Han Yufan was because she was being polite to a stranger. She wanted him to understand where she stood. Now that everything had passed, she would work hard to look forward and walk alongside him. Mo Ting, don't regret it, because it's part of your past. Mo Ting immediately saw through her thoughts as he gently patted her on the cheek. If you can't get over it, then find a reasonable excuse. Tell yourself that everything you've experienced was because you wanted to meet me. Tongning let out a laugh, amused by Mo Ting's words. President Mo, thank you for treating me so well. Mrs. Mo, you are too polite. Mo Ting tilted his head and placed a kiss on Tongning's earlobe. Tongning lay peacefully in Mo Ting's arms, not worried that Han Yufan would expose their relationship. Apart from knowing that no one would believe his words, Mo Ting had already taken precautionary measures. However, even though Han Yufan had suffered a crushing defeat, Tongning's predicament had not been resolved. She was still the bed climber that everyone scolded, while Mo Yuro and Li Yu were still on the loose. Didn't Mo Yuro always think she was amazing? In order to climb up the ladder, she would do anything. If she found out that Tongning had married Mo Ting, it was hard to imagine what kind of expression she would have. Mo Yuro had spent her entire life playing tricks and stealing things. Who would have thought, in the end, she would end up empty-handed? Perhaps Han Yufan had found his conscience, so he left her with one last clue. He told her the exact location where he caught Mo Yuro. However, before Tongning could react, Mo Ting reacted faster than her. Lu Che, send someone to investigate Champagne Hotel. I want all the records of Li Yu's stay. Meanwhile, on Long Jie's side, she received a new development. Tongning, I found a reporter that has been secretly filming the jerk for half a year. He has a lot of evidence on Li Yu's dirty deeds. You will soon be able to clear your name. Let's take it one step at a time. Because, no matter how much evidence they found on Li Yu, they still couldn't prove that she had obtained her award fair and square. She still needed some time to sort everything out. However, just as she was starting to worry, the organizing committee of the annual Model Awards released a statement at 3 p.m. Firstly, they stated that Li Yu had indeed violated the rules and that the top 10 model awards had indeed been tampered with. Specifically, Mo Yuro had replaced another model and won the award. The organizing committee expressed their apologies and regrets. The other statement was regarding the Special Contribution Award. The organizing committee released a list of the judges for the Special Contribution Award and clarified that Li Yu was not involved. The most important criteria for the Special Contribution Award were data and actual impact. Tongning's Oriental Trend was indeed one of the top search engines in the US and had indeed caused quite a stir. This actual data was something that no one could deny. Even anti-fans couldn't lie through their teeth. Not only did the organizing committee release an official statement, they also held a press conference at 7 p.m. that night. The press conference would be held specifically to answer the question of the judges cheating. Although the officials had already stepped out to clarify, Tongning knew they were still lacking conclusive evidence. She needed to prove her innocence and win the award. She needed to prove to everyone that she had relied on her own hard work. The reason why this incident has gotten so big, apart from the fact that it was already shocking enough, was also because of our opponents, Mo Ting explained as he looked at the analysis report Lu Che handed him. He was well aware of which media outlets Hai Rui controlled and which media outlets their opponents controlled. Look at these famous media outlets, they are all under Cheng Tian Entertainment. It seems, the fashion show in France has helped you make enemies. But, it doesn't matter, your innocence will be proven sooner or later. Tongning leaned against Mo Ting's body, feeling warm and comfortable. In that case, do you still insist on me going to Cheng Tian? Of course you have to go. The reason why this incident has been so difficult to deal with is because you don't have your own team. Ning, do you need me? Are you afraid of competing with Cheng Tian? Chapter 95. Of course, she wasn't afraid of competition. Compared to those models who had a smooth sailing life from the start, she had already experienced the highs and lows of the world. So, what was there for her to be afraid of? Nothing was more painful than being betrayed by a lover, being trampled on by a mistress, or being blacklisted by a top modeling agency. What she really needed to be afraid of were the people who would stab her in the back. They were the ones who were most afraid of falling. Thinking of this, Tongning's heart calmed down a lot as the anxiety in her heart slowly dissipated. Wifey, you need to know, although Hai Rui is mine, I am yours, so, if you want to, in the entire entertainment industry, no one can be your opponent. It's just you don't want to do this. Tang Ning tried her best to lean into Mo Ting's embrace as she inhaled the warmth from his body. It was like she had been poisoned, addicted, and hard to quit. Yes, I have you. After speaking, she lifted her body and placed a kiss on Mo Ting's Adam's apple. I want you. Huh. Mo Ting didn't hear her clearly, so he responded with a gentle sound of confusion. Tang Ning hooked her arms around Mo Ting's neck and repeated beside his ear, I want you. After speaking, Mo Ting lifted her in his arms and turned around to return to the bedroom. Tang Ning smiled in satisfaction. She wanted the most intimate contact. She wanted him inside her body. That feeling would bring her closer to Mo Ting's heart and allow her to listen to his steady and powerful heartbeat. 7 p.m. The annual Model Awards Organizing Committee held a press conference. Under the spotlight, the representative sat on stage waiting for the reporters to ask questions. He was in charge of answering questions related to the unspoken rules of the judges. May I ask if the contents of the contract between Tianyi Entertainment and artist Li Yu are true? Who else is involved in the bed climbing scandal? It is true. According to our current investigation, the main model involved is Tianyi's artist Mo Yuro. Although Tang Ning was mentioned, she was not involved in the unspoken rules, the representative explained in a serious tone. How can you guarantee that Tang Ning is innocent? Even if Li Yu doesn't participate in the voting for the award, can't he bribe the other judges? Tianyi Entertainment has always been a lowly agency. Didn't Tang Ning climb to where she is today because she climbed into bed? The person in charge was dressed in a suit and leather shoes. Seeing the reporter ask such a question, he already knew what was going on. These reporters were not here to pursue the truth, nor were they here to investigate the unspoken rules of the annual Model Awards. They were here to make things difficult for Tang Ning. He had seen scenes like this too many times. Between industries, it was easy to defame each other behind their backs. But, if they wanted to use the Model Awards as a target to make things difficult for Tang Ning, they were too vicious and confident. So, the manager's lips curved upwards as he asked the reporter in a loud voice, the organizers have already announced the components of the award. The most important component is the model's contribution. It should account for 70% of the total. Tang Ning's achievements are obvious to all. The other 30% is the votes of the judges. Do you think Tang Ning or Li Yu have the ability to bribe all the judges? The reason why I am sitting here today is because I want to restore the truth. If the media, for the sake of your own selfishness, completely disregards the truth and distorts the truth, then I suggest you find a better place to defame Tang Ning. The reporters had been seen through, so they turned their heads away awkwardly without saying another word. Tianyi Entertainment is a lowly agency, but not everyone is a bad person. For example, if your parents are criminals and gamblers, does that mean you are the same? I won't comment on what kind of person Tang Ning is, but words alone have no proof. Yet, you made up a story about her climbing into your bed. It seems to me, in order to gain the attention of the public, you have abandoned even the most basic of conscience. I feel this is the root of all evil. The funniest thing is, you even mocked her for climbing into your bed. The pot calling the kettle black. Regarding the negative impact this annual Model Awards has had on the public, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to express our sincerest apologies. Tang Ning sat on the sofa at home, watching the live broadcast of the press conference in silence. The other party actually dared to slap the reporters in the face in front of everyone. Under such a terrible situation, he helped her clear her hard-earned innocence. It's rare to see a good person in this world that dares to speak the truth. However, just as Tang Ning finished speaking, she received a phone call from Long Jie. The paparazzi that had evidence of Li Yu's indecent behavior was not willing to cooperate. In fact, he was demanding an exorbitant price. Sure enough, a kind person was easily taken advantage of. Even a paparazzi wanted to extort money from her. Long Jie, come back. I don't like being threatened. Tang Ning's tone was calm. But we will think of another way. Trust me. Long Jie was helpless. After arguing with the paparazzi for a while, she could only return empty-handed. Tang Ning, paparazzi like him are only after money. If we don't use money, since he can help us clear our names, he can also help others set us up behind our backs. As long as you start this, He will continue to extort money endlessly. If you don't believe me, you can try it. It wasn't like she hadn't seen things like this happen before. Since she was innocent, there was no reason for her to give someone money for free. I understand, Long Jie nodded her head. She shouldn't have been so impatient, she almost caused trouble for Tongning. If she had actually used money, it would have been exactly what the paparazzi wanted and made people think there was something wrong with Tongning. In reality, with the clarification from the annual Model Awards Committee, Tongning's situation had changed significantly. After all, she had a large number of loyal fans. Her fans had sorted out the suspicious points of the incident and, to a certain extent, gained a favorable impression from passers-by. Not long after, Tongning once again released a statement saying she had already hired a lawyer to send a letter to Tianyi, suing them for damaging her reputation. As soon as this statement was released, everyone could see Tongning's determination to defend her reputation. While her popularity was rising, she had never considered leaving Tianyi. However, Tianyi had repaid her kindness with evil, causing her to be wronged and her reputation to suffer irreparable damage. However, she did not directly sue Han Yufan, nor did she complain about how Tianyi had treated her unfairly. She simply wanted to investigate the negative impact the bed climbing scandal had on her. She simply wanted to show that she had not slept with anyone and that she did not climb into bed with anyone. Towards Tianyi and Han Yufan, she simply had one word for them: we don't owe each other anything. At the same time, the public received a message: Tongning's departure from Tianyi was inevitable. So, who would she end up with next? Sitting in his office, Mo Ting paid close attention to the media's speculation on Tongning's future. In reality, he really wanted to sign Tongning to Hai Rui. Chapter 96. But, at the same time, Mo Ting understood that Tongning didn't like to achieve instant success, she liked to keep her feet on the ground. If he gave her a platform at Hai Rui, she would feel like she didn't have her own capabilities and would feel uneasy all day long. Rather than that, he would rather accompany her as she grew up. This way, their relationship would be even more inseparable. Mo Ting averted his deep and sharp gaze from the television as he lowered his head and cleared his throat. Seeing this, Lu Che immediately asked, "Did you fall sick because you've been busy all day and night?" Mo Ting gently held his forehead. Under the reflection of the lights, his sculpture-like face did indeed look a little tired. But, he still reminded Lu Che, "Don't tell Tongning. President, your workload has seriously exceeded the limit." Lu Che was wearing a pair of black spectacles today. As he reminded Mo Ting, he stretched out his hand and adjusted his spectacles. "Cancel tonight's meeting," Mo Ting said calmly. Lu Che nodded his head and left the office. He originally pulled out his phone, but when he remembered Mo Ting's instructions, he let out a deep sigh. This king-like man had never let anyone see his weak side, he even hid it from the people closest to him. After Tongning released her lawsuit against Tianyi, Tianyi did not respond for a long time. After Han Yufan was kicked out of Tianyi, the person that replaced him had no ability to deal with urgent matters. They didn't owe each other anything. In reality, they didn't owe each other anything. According to the many incidents that Tianyi's fans had compiled, they had used Tongning multiple times to achieve their own goals. For example, from the start of the Crown Star show until today, Tongning had suffered a lot. Even an ordinary person would find it hard to endure. But, she used her magnanimous heart to tell the other party that they didn't owe each other anything. Under the circumstances where she was constantly being slandered and in a situation where she couldn't even protect herself, she was still able to let go so easily. It was clear to see that her character was not as bad as the rumors spread by the haters. She even gave Long Jie another phone call to apologize for the scandal that had previously been put on hold. There was even a famous radio station that invited Tongning to be their special guest. Everything was progressing in the right direction. Although there were still voices of opposition, compared to the scolding and cursing from a few days ago, Long Jie was now much more amiable. She understood that Tongning had slowly emerged from the mire and that there would eventually be a day when the clouds would disperse. 7 p.m., Tongning left home to attend a short meeting at the radio station. However, when she gave Mo Ting a phone call, Lu Che picked up. Lu Che replied that Mo Ting was in the middle of a meeting, but Tong Ning could hear a suppressed cough coming from the other side of the phone. The voice wasn't loud, but it sounded dry and hoarse. Although Lu Che quickly hung up the phone, Tong Ning still felt something wasn't right. Long Jie, turn around and head to Hai Rui, Tong Ning suddenly instructed. But the agreed time is 8 p.m. If we go to Hai Rui now, we won't make it in time. Long Jie looked at the time. She didn't understand Tong Ning's motive. Let's go to Hai Rui first, Tong Ning repeated. Long Jie was stunned for a moment, but she quickly turned around. How about I go to the radio station and help you hold it back while you drive to Hai Rui? Tong Ning, you have only just recovered a bit of your popularity. The radio station today is not someone we can afford to offend. You can't expose yourself at a time like this. Tong Ning thought for a moment and nodded her head. Thank you, Long Jie. I understand, you aren't a stubborn person. I'll get out of the car first. Long Jie waved her hand to show that she didn't mind. She knew better than anyone what kind of person Tong Ning was. Plus, along the way, she hadn't been able to help Tong Ning much. Now that she finally had an opportunity, she was going to make use of it. Tong Ning looked at Long Jie gratefully and immediately got into the driver's seat. 20 minutes later, she arrived at Hai Rui Entertainment and found a secluded spot to park her car. When Lu Che received a phone call, he was confused. But, as soon as he arrived downstairs, he saw Tong Ning standing breathlessly at the elevator entrance. He immediately ran over to greet her. Madam, why are you here? What happened? Where's Mo Ting? Take me upstairs. The president is still in a meeting. In that case, I'll go upstairs and wait for him, Tong Ning insisted. Lu Che was helpless. He couldn't leave Tong Ning here, so he had no choice but to take her to the CEO's office through a special passageway. Afterwards, Tong Ning successfully spotted Mo Ting lying on the sofa with his right hand covering his eyes to block out the strong lights. Tong Ning immediately turned off the main lights and gently approached Mo Ting's side. She stretched out her hand and placed it on his forehead. You have a fever. Have you seen a doctor? Lu Che thought Tong Ning had come looking for Mo Ting because something had happened. But, looking at Tong Ning's anxious expression, he realized it must have been because of the phone call. After all, Tong Ning had never asked for anything of her own accord. She had never been the type to drag Mo Ting down. I'm sorry, madam. Lu Che apologized sincerely. The president doesn't want to go, he says he'll be able to handle it. He really thinks he has the body of a diamond. Tong Ning mumbled before sighing. What about the family doctor? Has he asked for one? Lu Che. Just as Tong Ning was about to call the doctor, Mo Ting suddenly woke up. Seeing Tong Ning in front of him, he asked in a hoarse voice, Why are you still here? Don't you have a meeting at 8 p.m.? You didn't tell me you were sick. Now that I found out, how could I not worry? Tong Ning asked. It's just a minor illness. I'll take you there right now. After speaking, Mo Ting tried to get up, but Tong Ning held him back. Those messy things aren't as important as you. Tong Ning's eyes turned red. After speaking, Tong Ning's eyes turned red. She was also surprised why she was so worried the moment she found out Mo Ting was sick. Then, when she found out he didn't tell her, she became so angry. Mo Ting was a little surprised. Seeing Tong Ning's eyes turn red, he immediately stretched out his hand and touched her face. It's really just a little discomfort. My body is fine, you don't need to worry. I didn't tell you because I thought it was a small matter. Let's go, I'll take you there. This time, Tong Ning did not resist. She helped him up. No matter how small your problem is, I'm still worried. Plus, between a husband and wife, it's precisely because they don't care about small things like this that they end up becoming big things. You can go, but you have to buy some medicine along the way. I will watch you take it. Tong Ning's attitude was extremely firm. Mo Ting felt like a crack had appeared in his sturdy armor. He had no choice but to admit defeat. Chapter 97. On the way to the radio station, Tong Ning got out of the car to buy some medicine. She then found some warm water and watched as Mo Ting took the medicine. Mo Ting looked at her nervous expression and squeezed out a smile. You've already taken the medicine. Are you still angry? In that case, the next time we meet, Will you still not tell me? Tongning asked in seriousness as she looked at him. I know that you're very strong and that you're able to devise strategies for everything. You're always able to let people see the bright and beautiful side of you, but a real couple is precisely when you need me the most. I can be by your side. You might think that this is a small matter, but I still worry. Mo Ting, the love I want isn't that complicated. I just want someone who cares about me and someone I care about. That's all. After hearing this, Mo Ting was silent for 2 seconds. He then stretched out his arms and pulled Tongning into his embrace. I won't do it again. I will listen to you. Tongning punched Mo Ting's chest in silent protest as she wrapped her arms tightly around his waist. As the king of the entertainment empire, being decisive was his normal behavior. After all, this was a cruel world and the entertainment industry was more realistic than any other industry. Although he hadn't gone so far as to disguise himself, he didn't like to show his true face to others. But, the woman in his arms. Even a simple cold could make her so anxious. It was like she was displaying the most primitive and simple side of human relationships in front of him. That's right, if you like someone, then go ahead and love, act coquettishly, throw a tantrum and give your all. Why did you have to be so tired in front of the person you like? The couple hugged each other in silence, absorbing each other's warmth. Not long after, Tongning's phone rang with the alarm of 7:50 p.m. The meeting at the radio station was about to start, but she was still on her way to the station. Tongning furrowed her brows but did not say a word. At this time, Mo Ting snatched the phone from her hand and said, I won't let you suffer. The meeting room at the radio station. The manager, the host and the other guests had already arrived, but only Tongning had yet to appear. The manager glanced at Long Jie, who was sitting in Tongning's seat, with a hint of disgust in his eyes. Long Jie's heart skipped a beat. She had a bad feeling. The radio station was very famous in the industry. Although it wasn't a live show, because of its high-quality production and meticulous process, it had a good reputation. Of course, there were plenty of artists that fought to appear on the show. As for Tongning, as a slightly famous model, she had the least influence out of the 4 artists that were invited. Not only that, she was also half-hearted and only allowed her assistant to appear. The person in charge was a man in his 30s. Because of his white hair, he looked a little old. He pointed at Long Jie and said, Fatty, you can leave now. Your model can forget about appearing on my show ever again. It wasn't that Long Jie didn't try her best, but the other party was stubborn. No matter what reason you had, if you didn't show up at the appointed time, you were unprofessional and had no professional ethics. Everyone else also looked at Long Jie impatiently. It was almost as if they were reminding her to leave and not interrupt their work. Everyone came from all directions. It wasn't just your model who was busy. Long dong long long, he Jie and had, he stood up and was angry, Tanging said. As Tanging, the person, he tanged tangled, Tango said. Tango ting mo, he tanged he tang, he mo he tang. Do you think you can come whenever you want? Tongning, let me tell you, take your assistant and leave. Does a person who climbs to the top really think he's a big deal? Tanging was a little surprised. After calming himself down, he pulled Long Jie to his side. We will leave immediately. Tanging. It's okay. Tanging shook her head and glanced at the other people in the room. She did not feel embarrassed as she calmly left. This is the first time someone has dared to be late to my show. What the hell? The person in charge vented his anger. Just as he was about to sit back down and continue with the meeting, his assistant suddenly entered the room with a man. The man was dressed in a suit and had a pair of black-framed glasses on his face. Assistant Lu, it's you. I didn't know you were coming, sorry for not going out to meet you. The person in charge immediately stood up and greeted Lu Che respectfully. No need to be so polite. I am here to announce something on behalf of our president. Hai Rui has decided to stop sponsoring our radio show. The man was a little surprised. He didn't understand what he had done to cross Mo Ting's bottom line. He quickly ushered Lu Che out of the room and asked him anxiously, Why is this happening? This show is doing so well. Did we do something to displease President Mo? You may not give others a chance to explain, but our president can also not give you a chance to explain. That model, Tanging, was delayed because of our president. It's fine if she doesn't go on the show, but our president can't not return the favor. So you guys are out of luck. As soon as the man heard it was because of Tanging, he felt a chill down his spine. Years of success had created his arrogant personality. After so many years, he had long forgotten to give others a chance. Who would have thought, this time, he would be so stubborn? Assistant Lou, can you help me plead for leniency? This show can't be stopped just like that. For President Mo, even if a small show stops, there's always a new one to start. I will be more careful from now on. I won't be so arrogant again. The man's forehead was already covered in a cold sweat. This was his career, he had spent so many years on it, he couldn't let it go to waste like this. She was only late by a few seconds. You could have just asked her to leave without giving her a chance to explain. Was there a need to insult her? Give Tanging a phone call and plead for leniency yourself. Also, President Mo doesn't want to hear any nonsense, so watch your mouth. As soon as the man heard that he was looking for Tanging, he immediately thought back to how arrogantly he had told Tanging to get lost a moment ago. He immediately felt a chill down his spine. But, for the sake of the show and not to offend Hai Rui, he immediately contacted his assistant and asked him to give him Tanging's contact details. Long Jie picked up the phone. At this moment, they had already returned to their car. However, the man asked them to return with a completely different attitude than before. Tanging received the phone from Long Jie and heard the man say, "Miss Tang, I was too impulsive just now. I didn't ask you for the reason and even insulted you. I'm so sorry, can you come back? I was indeed late today. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm sorry I won't be able to go on your show. What about President Mo?" The word bed climbing suddenly flashed across Tanging's mind, so her voice turned cold. "Since I've already paid for my mistake, you should also pay for your words and actions." After speaking, Tanging hung up the phone. The man in charge and the man that she originally invited to be a nude model. She still remembered everything. Her attitude was good, but it didn't mean she didn't have a temper. Luckily, the bed climbing incident had turned the tables. So, it was time for her to strike back. Chapter 98. Mo Euro was still in hiding and had yet to make an appearance. Li Yu was also hiding overseas and had disappeared without a trace. But, this didn't mean she had no way to deal with the two. She hadn't completely removed the word bed climbing from her. Tongning, the magazine covers, runway shows and endorsements that you previously said you would replace, have contacted us again. What is your attitude towards this? Long Jie asked as she flipped through the emails in her inbox. Reply to the other party and tell them I need to take a break and won't be accepting any work for now. Mo Ting said Cheng Tian will be holding interviews in a few days, so I want to prepare. Plus, I have other things I want to take care of. Tongning replied gently as she received the email from Long Jie's hands. Long Jie looked straight into Tongning's eyes. Although she still couldn't see through her, they had worked together for a few years, so Long Jie could roughly guess what was going on. Are you referring to Mo Euro? It's like this woman has evaporated into thin air. It's not difficult to track her whereabouts. Her assistant is, after all, married. No matter how hard she tries to hide, there's no way she would ignore her family. Long Jie, help me find her. Tell her a big agency wants to sign her. You are that big agency, right? Long Jie probed. She and Han Yufan are the same, they can't prove my innocence. But, she can't continue to be like this. She can be willful and cause trouble whenever she wants. Tongning thought for a moment before replying in a soft voice. But, Long Jie could sense the ruthlessness in her words. If it was someone else that tried to defame Tongning today, she may not have been so ruthless. But someone like Mo Euro, although she appeared pitiful, she was not worthy of anyone's sympathy. Seeing Tongning like this, a scary thought suddenly popped into Long Jie's mind. After the bed climbing incident, Tongning seemed to have become more ruthless and clear-headed than before. Take her lawsuit against Tianyi as an example. Normally, an artist would fight to the death with Tianyi and Han Yufan. After all, Han Yufan was the main culprit. But, after the organizing committee of the National Model Awards helped her clarify the matter, Tongning chose to sever all ties with Tianyi. If she didn't pursue Han Yufan, the netizens would definitely say that she was guilty and didn't even dare to sue Han Yufan. But if she pursued the matter, she would definitely be placed in the eye of the storm. After all, her relationship with Han Yufan could not be erased. At that time, scandals such as her falling out with her old lover would definitely follow. A strong counterattack would definitely bring about a strong reaction. Internet violence would definitely make this matter even more complicated. Therefore, she filed a lawsuit, but she showed mercy and left some leeway for her old lover. This was elegance. Han Yufan didn't seem to have anything else to say, but in fact, he would only be scolded even worse. This made the anti-fans, who were ready to go crazy, suddenly feel like they had punched cotton. Soft and powerless. If the Model Awards organizing committee's clarification left the netizens hesitant to believe her, then the way she dealt with the matter with Tianyi pulled the hesitant netizens to her side. After all, she had made her position clear from the very beginning. A person with attitude and poise, even if there was no applause, would still wake up a portion of the people who followed the trend. So, in this roundabout battle, she won. And now, it was the beginning of her real counterattack. Tongning, in the past, I've never really gotten to know you properly. In reality, Long Jie knew Tongning wasn't stupid. She simply placed too much emphasis on relationships, so she gave everything to Han Yufan. Now that she was clear-headed and had suffered so much damage, her ability, which relied on nurturing, naturally improved quickly. Now you get to know each other? Tongning let out a gentle laugh, revealing a smile that made Long Jie dizzy. This was how she was. Towards her own people, she still maintained her heartfelt passion. I'm going to go look for news on Mo Euro. Tongning nodded her head as she prepared some porridge and side dishes in the kitchen. Returning to the bedroom, Mo Ting had just woken up. His body was covered in sweat, so he unbuttoned his robe and leaned against the headboard to look at some documents. Can't you get some rest? I'm just looking at the artists from Cheng Tian Entertainment. Mo Ting reached out his arms and pulled her into his lap. Why are you suddenly curious? It's still the same thing. You need to be in control of yourself to be at ease. That's why you're so tired. Tongning picked up a towel from the bedside table and began to wipe his sweat. According to your temper, I'm sure you've already rejected all your previous jobs. After all, with your current status, there's no need for you to return to them. If you want to go to Cheng Tian, of course I need to keep a close eye on you. Plus, this has nothing to do with being tired, because I don't care about others. After hearing this, Tongning froze. As expected, the person that understood her the most was Mo Ting. He was able to see through her intentions without any prior communication. Even Long Jie, who had known her for so many years, was slow to realize. Tongning pressed her delicate face against Mo Ting's chest and mumbled, "How did you become the CEO of Shanghai Rui in the past?" "I did it the same way, step by step." This was why they could appreciate each other. They could see through each other's difficulties and understand each other's methods. Even if they used methods and tricks, he could still understand the cruel situation she was in. "Wifey, actually, if you want me to sweat, you don't need to cover me like this. You can use other methods." Mo Ting was already feeling hot, and with his wife in his arms, his body subconsciously reacted. However, he remembered he was sick and was afraid of infecting Tongning, so he stretched out his arms and pushed her away. "I'm going to have a shower." Tongning looked at Mo Ting questioningly. "I'm afraid I'll infect you." Tongning smiled as she suddenly pushed the man back and flipped him over. "If it's contagious, then so be it. This can be considered as sharing our joys and sorrows." Although the sick Mo Ting didn't look as energetic as he usually did, he still made people want to ravage him. With this thought in mind, Tongning also pushed aside Mo Ting's robe, revealing his sweaty chest. Mo Ting's face was indeed a little pale, but within his deep eyes, there was a playful smile. Especially when Tongning took the initiative. Sometimes, being sick wasn't bad, the benefits he received were much better than usual. Being together with Tongning like this, both physically and mentally, was extremely satisfying. After all, who wouldn't like a way to protect each other? On a warm night like this, Mo Euro was still hiding in her rented home. Over the past few days, She had practically never left her home. All she did was watch the entertainment news. She couldn't accept it. The situation had gotten out of hand and she was already involved, yet Tongning was still living well. So well that she was a little jealous. Chapter 99. Tongning, I am currently at Mo Euro's manager's home. The next morning, Long Jie gave Tongning a phone call. However, his daughter seems to be sick. His wife is still young and has been playing games in her room. Is she seriously ill? Tongning furrowed her brows. What did Yulin think Mo Euro was? Why did he take her to heart? She has been crying and her body has been alternating between hot and cold. She looks quite pitiful. Tongning had actually heard the crying. If she hadn't seen it, it would have been fine. But, since Long Jie had seen it, she reminded, take her to the hospital and pay for the medical fees. Long Jie understood what Tongning meant. She quickly called an ambulance and rushed the child to the emergency room. As she left, the child's mother was still watching a movie with her headphones on. This child's fever almost turned into pneumonia. What's wrong with the adults? The doctor questioned as he examined the child's body. Just as Long Jie was about to respond, Mo Euro's manager rushed over. She looked at her daughter anxiously. Doctor, how is my daughter? Luckily, she was treated in time, otherwise, she would have developed pneumonia. Hearing that his daughter was fine, Yulin let out a sigh of relief. However, when he turned to look at Long Jie, he immediately looked at her cautiously. Why is it you? They were the ones who brought your daughter here, the doctor clarified for Long Jie after understanding their relationship. Yulin's emotions were a little complicated. After seeing his daughter had fallen asleep, he pulled Long Jie out the door. What do you mean by this? Are you trying to get news about Euro from me? Let me tell you, it's impossible. Long Jie laughed as she pulled out some cash from her wallet and handed it to Yulin. Tongning was the one who asked me to bring the child to the hospital. This money was also given to you by Tongning. Yulin, do you know why I look down on you? You've given everything to Mo Euro, but has she ever thought about the situation you and your daughter are in? In the end, she still needs enemies like us to help her. Yulin looked at the cash in his hand. He thought about how Mo Euro was already in this state, yet she still wanted jewelry and food. After a moment of silence, he pulled Long Jie aside. Thank you for saving my daughter. I can help you this once as a way to return the favor. Long Jie turned around and looked straight into Yulin's eyes. As expected, someone like Mo Euro couldn't even keep a loyal dog like Yulin. She deserved to be abandoned. Yulin lied to Mo Euro by telling her he found a big boss who was willing to sign her to appear on the front cover of a men's magazine. After hearing this, Mo Euro was filled with excitement. Let's meet at 7 p.m. tonight at Glory Hotel. Long Jie, thank you for your hard work, Tongning said calmly, like she had everything planned out. It's not hard at all. I also want to see how Mo Euro ends up. Tongning's invitations continued to pour in, but Tongning rejected them all with the excuse that she was taking a break. Most of the invitations were responded to politely, but there was only one that Tongning asked Long Jie to name. She thanked the person in charge and even made a phone call to invite Tongning for an interview. As soon as the editor heard this, he immediately went to look into the name Tongning mentioned. It turned out, the jerk actually invited Tongning to be a nude model. In the fashion industry, the biggest taboo was offending others. Who would have thought? The jerk actually invited Tongning to be a nude model. You don't need to work here anymore. Hurry and get lost. At the time, we did reject Tongning to avoid the bed climbing scandal, but we already breached the contract first. How dare you ask Tongning to be a nude model? What did I say at the time? I told you to avoid it. What stupid thing did you do? Editor. I was wrong. The man felt wronged. He never expected retribution to come so quickly. Hurry and get lost, her assistant has already remembered your name. How can you continue working here? Because of this incident, the magazine industry was now in awe of Tongning's name. To be able to escape from a dirty scandal like the bed climbing scandal, was she really an ordinary person? Keep your eyes open before you go out. 5 p.m. Hyatt Regency. Mo Ting had just recovered from a serious illness and was currently working in the study room. Lu Che had just received a document from the agency. It was a detailed record of Li Yu's travels over the past month. From the looks of it, Lu Che had put in a lot of effort into investigating Li Yu. Of course, the information that Hai Rui wanted was confidential and did not alert anyone. "Is the meeting over?" Tongning asked as she pushed open the door. "Perfect, come over here," Mo Ting waved at her. Mo Ting waved at her. After she walked over to his side, he pulled her into his embrace and showed her the information on the computer. "This old artist has already secretly recruited 4 models in the past month. One of them is from Cheng Tian." Tongning looked at the densely packed records and furrowed her brows. "Jerk. No matter what, with this record, we can finally prove your innocence. CEO Mo, you really have the ability to reach the sky." Tongning was a little surprised as she turned her head and looked at Mo Ting in disbelief. "Don't tell me you hired the police to be your paparazzi. This old jerk is used to cheating, he is a bit unscrupulous. Investigating him isn't that difficult, it just takes a bit of time." Tongning flipped through the information and looked at the models that were involved. She was shocked. Of course, she couldn't expose them like this. This would indeed prove her innocence, but the other models would be implicated. Of course, she couldn't do something like this. After all, she had made so many enemies and buried so many hidden dangers. It wasn't like they were trying to frame her, she simply had to deal with 1 or 2 people. Isn't this information a little too late? Mo Ting's heart ached for Tongning. Back when she was being slandered, she couldn't find any evidence to prove her innocence. As a result, she had been wronged and wronged for nothing. Tongning froze for a moment before shaking her head. The truth is never too late. Mo Euro was the one who started the bed climbing scandal, but there were a lot of anti-fans and marketing. This was all done by someone from Cheng Tian. The manager called Yongjing is indeed resourceful. Tongning was well aware that she was standing in the way of others. "I know you will make good use of this information." Mo Ting was never worried about this. Afterwards, he looked at the time and realized it was already 5:30 p.m., so he reminded Tongning, "Aren't you going to see Mo Euro? Why aren't you getting ready? Are you okay staying at home on your own?" Tongning gently stroked Mo Ting's handsome face. "Silly girl." Tongning smiled as the couple hugged each other affectionately. Afterwards, Tongning left the study room. At this time, Mo Ting pulled out his phone and gave Lu Che a phone call. "I'm sure there aren't any paparazzi around Glory Hotel. Also, Lu Che, you may need to work overtime." "President, do you want to?" "Of course I want to personally go and cheer my wife on." Chapter 100. Beijing's night sky was filled with twinkling stars. As she hadn't stepped out of her room for a few days, Mo Euro stared greedily at the sky. After her miscarriage, her body had been weak. Because she had to hide from the media, she naturally didn't have the chance to go to the hospital for a checkup. Of course, she didn't have the money. When I get back to work, I will buy the property beside Xiangxi River. When that time comes, we can go back to how we used to be and live the rich life we used to. I believe, after all the pain I've been through, I'm bound to have good fortune after surviving a disaster." Yulin did not say a word, he simply forced a smile. "Are you still angry? Didn't you just use all the money you had on you to buy some clothes? Do you need to give me that attitude?" Yulin did not respond. The money was left behind by Tongning to pay for his daughter Dodo's medical expenses. Yet, when Mo Euro left the house, she didn't even bother to say goodbye and directly used it to sell clothes and accessories. "Euro, how have I treated you all these years?" Yulin held back his anger for a moment, but in the end, he couldn't hold it in any longer. As the words left his mouth, he couldn't help but tremble. However, he hid it well. "Okay." Mo Euro replied nonchalantly. "Do you have to be so stingy? I'm about to start shooting magazines again. When the time comes, I will return everything to you. How could you be so stingy?" Yulin looked straight ahead, his throat was dry and sore. He finally understood the difference between Mo Euro and Tongning. While Mo Euro did whatever she wanted, Tongning was always planning for her future. Although he understood that he was part of Tongning's plan, the amazing thing about Tongning was that even though you knew her intentions, you were still willing to do anything for her, simply because she treated you like a person. That was money to save my daughter's life. After quite some time, Yulin finally said with a hint of sadness in his voice. Mo Yuro paused for a moment as she tilted her head and looked at Yulin. She then scoffed, "Since I used it, what else can you do? Isn't your wife still at home? Plus, if I dress in rags, people will look down on me." Yulin's face turned pale. Mo Yuro's vanity made him feel overwhelmed. She was already in this situation. She was already known as a bed climber. Why didn't she know how to control herself? Was face really that important? Soon, the two of them arrived at the entrance of Glory Hotel. To save face, Yulin's car was rented from somewhere else. Mo Yuro was still acting like a big shot. No matter where she went, she was like a superstar. Perhaps this was Mo Yuro's last bit of pride. Even at this point, she still refused to admit defeat. The two of them entered the lobby of the hotel, but behind them, the waiters were pointing at them. "Isn't that the climbing model Mo Yuro? It's her, it's her. She's amazing. Didn't she just miscarry? You're out looking for targets again so soon." It seems like there's another big gossip. It wasn't that Mo Yuro didn't hear this, but she just let out a HMPH, as if she couldn't be bothered to argue. Afterwards, the two entered the room they had agreed on. However, from the moment Mo Yuro entered, she had been waiting for 2 whole hours. Her expression had changed from one of confidence to one of shock. "UGE, do you think they won't be coming?" Yulin didn't say anything. How could the other party not come? "Don't worry, they will definitely come." Mo Yuro tried her best to hold back. Finally, the waiters pushed open the door. Looking closely, they were actually Tongning and Long Jie. Mo Yuro's chest rose and fell as she stood up and pointed at Tongning. "Tongning, you are amazing. You even want to compete with me for the front cover of a men's magazine." Tongning did not respond. Her expression was calm as usual. However, Long Jie couldn't help but laugh from behind her. "Does our Tongning need to compete with you for a magazine that doesn't even exist?" "What do you mean?" "What I mean is, the owner of the magazine is Tongning," Long Jie explained with a look of pity. Mo Yuro suddenly turned her head and looked at Yulin. Yulin looked back at her with a pained expression. As their eyes met, Mo Yuro was obviously in disbelief. "You betrayed me?" Yulin let out a laugh as he shook his head. His voice was calm. "To say I betrayed you is a bit harsh. Mo Yuro, I've already done everything I could for you, yet you even took the money I used to save my daughter's life. I really don't owe you anything." Mo Yuro looked at Yulin angrily. Looking at the man that once swore he would never leave her, her heart was about to explode with anger. "Is it because your daughter is sick? Is it because I have no money or power? Stop using the power your daughter gave you as an excuse." Tongning glanced at Long Jie. Long Jie immediately understood as she pulled out a card from her handbag and handed it to Yulin. "There's not much money in here, just enough to save your daughter." Yulin's hands trembled as he received the card. His throat moved. "Thank you. Are you crazy? Yulin, how could you betray me for the sake of money? Your daughter will die a horrible death." Yulin never expected to hear such a vicious curse from Mo Yuro's mouth. So, he sneered and said the truth. "Mo Yuro, it's true. You will never win against Tongning. Just wait and see your fate." After speaking, Yulin stumbled out of the hotel room, leaving the trio behind. Tongning was gentle and calm. Even at a time like this, it was impossible to tell what she was feeling. But Mo Yuro was extremely cautious. Nothing good could have happened for Tongning to keep her here like this. So, Mo Yuro immediately looked around, afraid she would be recorded or filmed again. "Tongning, what do you want to do to me?" Mo Yuro was currently all alone, so she had to be cautious. After all, Tongning still had Long Jie. Plus, everything that was happening in front of her could be a trap. "Don't be so nervous, Mo Yuro. Just act like normal. I simply want to tell you something from the bottom of my heart. I feel like we have a lot in common. What do you want to talk about? You can tell me how I stole Han Yufan from you, step by step. Tongning, even if you are stronger than me now, It doesn't change the fact that I stole Han Yufan from you, Mo Yuro said. She wasn't afraid of losing, she was simply afraid of losing to Tongning. The last thing she wanted was for Tongning to see her current life. Do you know the day before you and Han Yufan agreed to register, how we were entangled? He said you chased after him like a bitch and that he was sick of you. Mo Yuro thought she could provoke Tongning, but actually, I really need to thank you. Tongning sat in her chair and revealed a smile at Mo Yuro, because, I'm sure you have no idea. On the day you injured yourself to stop Han Yufan from registering with me, I had already married someone else. Chapter 101. Married? With who? Mo Yuro acted like she had heard the biggest joke in the world as she pointed at Tongning with trembling fingers. Tongning, stop making things up. Others may not know, but do you think I don't know how deep your feelings for Han Yufan are? Because of Han Yufan, you were so stupid that you walked in my show over and over again to help me get to the top. Even if you were injured, you still wanted to seek revenge. And now you say you're married? Don't you think you're being too fake? You just can't accept the fact that you lost to me last time, so you need to find a way out. We are both women, why are you still acting in front of me? Tongning looked at Mo Yuro. Sometimes, it was hard for her to understand why men liked a woman like Mo Yuro. But gradually, she began to understand, men liked women like her. Beautiful, vain, easy to get what she wanted as long as they gave her what she wanted. She was a little smart, but not too smart, so she was easy to control. Especially since Han Yufan had her as his official fiancée and Li Yu already had a family. If he didn't choose someone like her, who else would he choose? Mo Yuro, deep down, you know very well whether I'm telling the truth or not. Tongning sat firmly in her chair as she placed her hands on the table and clasped her hands together. You always thought I didn't leave Tianyi because I still had feelings for Han Yufan. But, when have you ever seen me fight for him? The reason I didn't leave Tianyi was because I wanted to step all over you and return to the modeling industry. Don't tell me you can't feel it at all. Now, you are like an ant that can be trampled on. Do you think I still need to lie to you? After speaking, Tongning leaned back in her chair. At this time, the sound of a waiter knocking on the door echoed through the room. Long Jie stepped forward to open the door. The waiter had already prepared a sumptuous dinner. Madam, this is what your husband asked us to prepare. Please enjoy. Tongning looked at the food in front of her and smiled. Thank you. Hearing the waiter call her madam, Mo Yuro was already half convinced. However, she couldn't figure out who Tongning was marrying. She didn't want to accept the fact that she had snatched the trash Han Yufan away. In reality, she was pushing Tongning forward. Mo Yuro, you are actually quite a sacrificial person. Tongning picked up her knife and fork as she ate elegantly, teasing Mo Yuro. Who is your husband? Mo Yuro asked stiffly. She had spent so much effort to steal away Han Yufan, but in the end, she had created an opportunity for Tongning to reach the top in one step. The man she had tried so hard to steal was actually helping Tongning get rid of the trash around her. She even hugged Han Yufan and entertained herself for a long time. Why don't you guess? Mo Yuro lowered her head in thought as she carefully tried to recall which man had interacted with Tongning the most. Since the start of the Crown Star show, there was a man that spoke up for Tongning. When she went to the US airport, there was also a man that appeared. At that time, Han Ruoshua was so excited. At the Bright Night Gala, Tongning and a man were wearing matching outfits. During the group photo incident, a man bravely helped Tongning get rid of Han Ruoshua, and this time, during the bed climbing incident, a director of Hai Rui stood up for Tongning and went against the netizens to speak up for her. Every single one of these incidents was not without a trace that could be traced. However, no one connected the two of them together. Because the other person was the CEO of Hai Rui Entertainment, Mo Ting. Mo Yuro's expression suddenly turned ugly. It was too chaotic. She couldn't accept that at the same time she stole away Han Yufan, Tongning and Mo Ting got married. Tongning lifted her head to admire Mo Yuro's expression. She was sure Mo Yuro had already guessed something. Just as she was about to say something, the door to the private room was once again pushed open. This time, the person that entered was no longer a waiter, It was Mo Ting who had originally agreed to rest at home. He entered the room with an intimidating presence. His footsteps were firm and powerful, the noble aura he exuded was natural. But none of this was as captivating as his eyes. Under Mo Yuro's astonished gaze, he walked up to Tongning and lifted her chin from behind. A gentle kiss fell on her lips. This kind of inverted kiss made the two of them look incomparably intimate. "You haven't finished yet. I've been waiting for a while. I'm currently helping Miss Mo Yuro recall." Tongning grabbed onto Mo Ting's arm and pulled him over to sit beside her. Mo Yuro felt as if there was something in her throat that she couldn't stop swallowing. Her hands couldn't help but tremble. She stole away Han Yufan. Snatching Han Yufan away was to make Tongning suffer so much that she would rather die. But, who would have thought, she actually pushed Tongning to Mo Ting, to the big boss of the entertainment industry. Haha, she had always laughed at Tongning for helping her prepare the wedding dress. But what about her? She was the stupidest idiot in the world. She was so stupid that she sent her enemy onto the throne. The truth is often a little cruel. Mo Ting's sharp gaze landed on Mo Yuro's stunned expression. "Actually, I think Miss Mo, compared to being a model, there are other careers that are more suitable for you." "Mo." "President Mo, mistress." Tongning pinched the back of Mo Ting's hand, gesturing for him to stop joking around. Mo Ting tilted his head and looked at his wife as he placed his right hand on the back of her chair. It was like a silent declaration. "This woman is mine, she is the one I want to protect and love." Tongning seriously admired Mo Yuro's expression. She couldn't tell if she was disappointed, regretful or embarrassed. So, she simply asked Mo Yuro, "Now, do you still think stealing away Han Yufan is something to be proud of?" "How was that possible?" Long Jie stood behind them and laughed. If she was in Tongning's position, she would have directly killed herself. After all, she suddenly realized she was the stupidest idiot in the world. If you still feel proud, then go ahead and continue to be proud. After speaking, Tongning held onto Mo Ting's hand and stood up. She took one last look at the dumbfounded Mo Yuro and turned to leave the room. Long Jie did not follow them out. Instead, she walked over to Mo Yuro's side and whispered in her ear, "Actually, you've helped Tongning so much, shouldn't I be thanking you? I think you should hurry and hide properly. Creative Century is looking for you everywhere and wants you to pay for the breach of contract. How are you going to pay them back now? Creative Century has a background in the underworld. If they found you, what would happen to you?" Mo Yuro grabbed onto the edge of the table with both hands, so hard she wanted to dig her nails into the wood. Especially after Long Jie left, she immediately tried to escape. But before Tongning arrived, she had already instructed Long Jie to inform the people at Creative Century. By the time Mo Yuro stepped out of the hotel, she was dragged into a corner by a group of men and beaten up. Because she couldn't afford to pay them back. She couldn't afford to pay the breach of contract. Speaking of Creative Century, Tongning's contract had not been confirmed yet. She wanted to join Cheng Tian, but someone behind Cheng Tian felt Tongning was blocking their path. And now, Creative Century had extended an invitation to Tongning for the second time. Chapter 102. During the annual Top 10 Model Awards, Creative Century tried everything they could to cut ties with us after finding out Mo Yuro was going to win an award. Now that the bed climbing incident has passed, the agency has changed their mind. They are too unpredictable. Long Jie looked at the invitation and struggled to hold back the disgust in her heart. She didn't want to vomit. Tongning smiled without saying a word as she laid her head on Mo Ting's shoulder. Seeing Tongning wasn't interested in Creative Century, Long Jie quickly changed the subject. "Tongning, how bad do you think Mo Yuro's fate will be?" The CEO of Creative Century started his business as a bar owner. He has a background in both the black and white worlds. Although his background has faded away, he still has quite a few bars under his name. Lu Che explained Creative Century's background to Long Jie like he was a database of information. "So, I'm guessing in order for her to repay her debt, they will send her to drink with. She's quite compatible with Mo Yuro. In that case, do you want to hear something more interesting?" Lu Che turned his head and glanced at Long Jie with a playful smile. What is it? Actually, Mo Euro isn't her real name. Her father's surname is Liu. A fortune teller told her father that if he wanted his daughter to become famous, she would have to find a godbrother with the surname Mo and change her surname. As you all know, there are many examples like this in the entertainment industry. Many people's names are just stage names. Lu Che squinted his eyes and revealed a slight smile. Do you want to know what Mo Euro's real name is? Hurry up and tell me. Long Jie had long been unhappy. Mo Euro had the same surname as Big Boss. It was an insult to Mo Ting. Liu. God. Fragrant. Fut. Ha ha ha. As soon as Long Jie heard the name, she spat out half of Lu Che's face. She was so happy that she was dancing. Lu Che quickly grabbed a napkin to wipe his face and glared at Long Jie. So dirty. This is enough to make me laugh for an entire year. Hearing the two bickering in front of her, Tongning couldn't help but bury deeper into Mo Ting's embrace. Mo Euro's modeling career had ended, but she had only just begun. Ting, we've been married for so long, do you want me to go see your family? We agreed to have a trial marriage for half a year. Although we don't need to do it now, I still want to give you a little more time to complete the things you want to do. So, you don't need to worry about my family. When the time is right, I will arrange for you to meet, Mo Ting replied as he hugged Tongning. What about your family? A self-mocking smile appeared on her face. You should know that with a background like the Tang family, they look down on those in the industry. Whether it is an actor or a model, they think we are either prostitutes or actors. Yet, not only did I enter the industry, I ended up with Han Yufan. In the eyes of the family, I was an anomaly. On top of that, when I left the Tang family, I was too ruthless. So, I hurt the only person that loves me, my grandfather. After hearing this, Mo Ting tightened his embrace. It's okay, you have me. Let's go with the flow. Long Jie quietly listened to the couple's conversation. She thought to herself, Tongning has indeed sacrificed so much for that jerk. Luckily, she married Mo Ting at that time. From now on, things will definitely get better. After her contract with Tianyi was terminated, news of Tongning's relationship with various agencies began to appear. However, Tongning continued to rest and did not attend any events. She was training to enter Chengtian and was also training to maintain her figure. She was also training to lose weight. At the same time, TQ's latest issue was released in Beijing. On the cover was the photo of Tongning's runway show in France. Originally, according to TQ's position, Lin Wei-sen had already mentally prepared himself. He did not expect Tongning's participation to affect the overall sales of the magazine. Even so, when he saw Tongning on the cover, he was still a little excited. At first, the magazine did not have much of a reaction. Because of the cost, many newsstands did not choose TQ. But, as long as they had the magazine on display, surprisingly, someone would take a liking to it and buy it. The owner of the newsstand was a little surprised. He walked out of the small space and pretended to be a passerby. After taking a closer look, he realized Tongning's cover was extremely eye-catching amongst the pile of magazines. No wonder she left a good impression. So, he immediately called the distributor and requested an additional subscription. Of course, this also proved that Mo Ting's decision was quick, accurate, and ruthless. His original intention was to introduce Tongning to successful people with resources. So, the release of TQ's new season had opened up a lot of channels for Tongning to find resources. This included attracting the attention of the CEO of Chengtian Entertainment, Lan Shi. The model-turned-CEO had already witnessed Tongning at the annual Model Awards, so she called her most trusted subordinate, Luo Hao, into her office and placed a copy of TQ magazine in front of him. Tongning, I would like to find an opportunity to sign a contract with you, what do you think? The man called Luo Hao was in his early 30s and had trained a few international models. He was a cautious person and was Lan Shi's indispensable right-hand man. President Lan, I think Tongning has the ability, but she is already 26 years old, she is no longer young. How can she compete with the other young women? But, you need to understand, Tongning does not need your concern. She has already experienced the highs and lows. All we need to do is give her a platform and she will return to being the top model sooner or later. That way, we can work together, Lan, she said with a vicious gaze. In that case, President Lan, you want me to manage Tongning? But I still have other things to do. I still need to take care of the newcomers. Manage them all together. With a few people on your side, you can balance each other out. You don't want to lose to Yongjing, right? With the mention of Yongjing, Luo Hao was silent for a second before nodding his head. Since that's the case, I'll go talk to Tongning first. I'll wait for your news. Luo Hao took the magazine and left Lan Shi's office. But, as he returned, he ran into Yongjing. As soon as Yongjing saw the magazine in Luo Hao's hands, her expression changed. President Lan, are you interested in Tongning? What has it got to do with you? Luo Hao asked as he placed the magazine on his desk. Luo Hao, you are well aware that Tongning and my artist are competitors. I have already set up a lot of obstacles for Tongning. If you sign her, have you thought about my situation? Yongjing pushed her glasses up her nose anxiously. Can you help me with this? On account of the fact that I've helped you beat up a child, can you stop Tongning from joining Chengtian? Luo Hao calmed down for a few seconds. In the end, he nodded his head. Okay. Chapter 103. Although they were once lovers, it was still a 5-year relationship. Even though they had already parted ways, there was no reason for him to hurt his ex. Luo Hao looked at Tongning on the cover of TQ magazine. For a moment, he felt like he had missed out on an international superstar. He reached out his hand and flipped the magazine over, afraid he would regret his decision the next second. Seeing this, Yongjing let out a sigh of relief as she crossed her arms. Since that's the case, I'll let you in on something. I've already contacted the paparazzi that has been following Li Yu. I will release a photo of Tongning and Li Yu in bed. I've even found a similar photo. Since you've gone against President Lan's wishes, we can only fight it out with Tongning. That way, President Lan won't hold you accountable. Luo Hao stared at his computer as his right hand moved the mouse. His voice was cold and filled with ridicule. It's not us, it's you. Plus, this will be the last time you will use our past to achieve your goals. I will only stop Tongning once. What happens in the future, we will see how the situation develops. So, whatever you do is your business, it has nothing to do with me. You. People who walk different paths can't make plans together. If there's nothing else, you can leave, I still have work to do. Luo Hao had already asked her to leave, so Yongjing couldn't stay any longer. In reality, she still liked Luo Hao, but the two of them had many conflicting views. Yongjing had no bottom line, as long as she could achieve her goals. On the other hand, Luo Hao looked down on her despicable methods. So, over the past 2 years, their relationship had become like fire and water. After leaving Luo Hao's office, Yongjing immediately made a phone call to the paparazzi that had previously blackmailed Tongning. I can't wait any longer, release the news. Alright, just wait for a good show. The other party's tone was somewhat excited. If Yongjing previously hired people to slander Tongning because she wanted to get revenge on Tongning for stealing her artist's resources at the French show, then this time, she was taking precautions. If Tongning was to join Chengtian, with her experience and professional abilities, she would definitely steal a lot of resources. At that time, the artists under her control would lose at least half of their opportunities. Yongjing definitely wouldn't allow that to happen. Above all, it was possible Tongning already knew the person who had set her up was her, Yongjing. Because of TQ's popularity, Tongning's fans felt that she had given them one surprise after another. So, they asked the official fan club to send over a large batch of gifts. However, Lu Che had to first check everything to make sure the contents were safe before they were delivered to Tongning. Late at night, Tongning was resting on Mo Ting's chest. Mo Ting had his right arm wrapped around Tongning as he caressed the beautiful curves of her back. At the same time, he was looking through her work emails on his phone. He noticed a suspicious email. Ning, look at this. Tongning lifted her head comfortably and took the phone from Mo Ting's hand. She looked at the anonymous email and saw a simple message. Be careful of your actions behind your back. Ting, what do you think? Seeing this strange reminder, Tongning couldn't figure out who was trying to be nice to her and what kind of tricks were they up to. TQ's popularity has attracted more attention to you, so you are bound to steal other people's opportunities. The person that has done the most to slander you is none other than Cheng Tian's Yongjing. Regardless of whether this reminder has anything to do with Yongjing or not, you need to focus on yourself first. Tongning understood what Mo Ting was trying to say. As long as she was flawless, no one would be able to find out. Mo Ting was reminding her that it was time to release the evidence of her bed-climbing incident. I don't care who this reminder is or who is trying to do something behind my back. Since Yongjing was the mastermind behind the bed-climbing incident, I will definitely let her have a taste of her own medicine. Tongning put down her phone and rested her chin on Mo Ting's sexy collarbone. It seems you've already figured out how to use Li Yu's travel records. Tongning smiled without replying. She was definitely going to go against Yongjing. She just didn't know whose methods were better. Thinking of this, Tongning immediately gave Long Jie a phone call. Are you asleep? I'm still watching a movie. Long Jie bounced up from the bed, worried something had happened to Tongning. Don't worry, Long Jie. If you have some time, I want to ask the paparazzi that tried to extort money from me, does he have any other partners? Do you have a plan you want to implement? Long Jie thought for a moment before replying, yes, that jerk has a cousin who is in charge of copywriting. That's good, Tongning replied gently. Just now, someone sent me an email reminding me to be careful of being hacked. Long Jie, in case something happens, can you get a hold of the contact details of that person? Yes, Tongning replied gently. Haha, I have a business card. Just you wait. After Long Jie hung up the phone, Tongning also put down her phone. Meanwhile, Mo Ting continued to gently stroke Tongning's back. Although his posture was lazy, Tongning still reached out her hand to touch his lips and said seductively, "Stop touching me. I'm starting to miss you." Mo Ting suddenly opened his eyes and a playful smile appeared on his lips. So sensitive. Huh. Tongning ignored him as she gently rubbed against his thigh. If I keep touching you like this, will you be able to handle it? Mo Ting suddenly flipped over and pressed Tongning under his body. He quickly placed kisses all over her body. However, as soon as Mo Ting's gaze landed on her slim waist, his eyebrows naturally furrowed. Are you still on a diet? I need to go to a bigger stage. I can't lose to those young women. In my heart, you are perfect no matter what. Tongning smiled. Encouragement from her lover always made her feel excited. So, she hooked her arms around Mo Ting's neck and gave him a soft kiss. She then gently sucked on his earlobe. Late at night, while Long Jie was making a phone call to the paparazzi's cousin, he was just about to release Tongning's scandals when Long Jie's phone call coincidentally intercepted him. The paparazzi thought Tongning had thought things through and still wanted to buy evidence. So, he did not reject Long Jie's request to meet up. However, he did not tell his brother about this. Yongjing had spent so much money to slander Tongning, yet he only got 30%. Since Tongning skipped his brother to contact him, he thought he could take advantage of this opportunity to extort some money from Tongning. So, before he released the scandals, he purposely deleted a portion of the information, claiming he still had some things to sort out and couldn't release it for the time being. The paparazzi had no choice but to trust his brother. He immediately gave Yongjing a phone call. Yongjing was very cautious, so she immediately asked, "There won't be any changes, will there?" No, of course not. Chapter 104. The next morning, Long Jie brought Li Yu's complete information to a cafe to meet the paparazzi's cousin. The two cousins, one with the surname Lu and the other with the surname Han, were the paparazzi that previously blackmailed Long Jie. He was also the cousin of the short man in front of her. The man's name was Han Ju. He was dressed in a black printed t-shirt and ripped jeans. His hairstyle was stylish and stylish. He was obviously the type of person that knew how to enjoy life. As soon as he saw Long Jie, he removed his sunglasses and raised his eyebrows. "Why did you ask me to come here?" Long Jie had no idea the man was already preparing to release Tongning's defamation, so she got straight to the point. If I told you it was a lucrative deal, would you dare to go behind your brother's back? How lucrative? You two brothers should be well aware that Tongning has a stubborn temper. Even if she is slandered to death, she will not spend money to clear her name. Originally, as soon as we received this information, we could have directly sent it out and Tongning would have given me full authority to handle it. But, every time I think about the bed climbing scandal, I feel wronged on Tongning's behalf. So, I have decided to work with you. I will give this information to you for free. Firstly, it is to prove Tongning's innocence. Secondly, you need to help me with one thing. Announce to the public that this information was given to you by Cheng Tian's Yongjing. Hearing this, Hanju realized Tongning already knew about this. So, he received the information from Long Jie suspiciously. Who would have thought, the information on Li Yu was even more complete, the names and photos of the female celebrities were included. He and his big brother had secretly taken photos. After all, many of them did not have concrete evidence. However, this information was simply irrefutable. Seeing Long Jie's sincerity, Hanju decided to reveal his cards. Actually, Yongjing is preparing to release Tongning's defamation. She is planning to use photoshopped photos to slander Tongning and Li Yu in bed. If it wasn't for your phone call last night, Tongning would be on the hottest news again. Hearing this, Long Jie was shocked. Luckily. That's why you are so stupid. The photos you released are not real. Sooner or later, the truth will be proven. How much money can Yongjing give you? And how much money can you get? Our Tongning will definitely not give you any money. But this information is different. If you send it out as usual and replace the names of the female stars with letters, do you think they won't take the initiative to contact you to give you benefits and money for public relations because they are afraid of being exposed? As for Yongjing's share, you won't be lacking either. Using the same logic, all you have to do is attack a certain fruit company and an insider with the surname Yang will leak the news. Do you think Yongjing won't come to you for a negotiation to quell the rumors? When Hanju heard this, he felt that it made sense. Plus, he had already been suppressed by his big bro enough. Since Long Jie had given him the information, it meant he had more information than his big bro, so he no longer had to listen to his big bro. Of course, I need to remind you that if these female celebrities are willing to fork out money, don't be greedy. Just show them some goodwill. Otherwise, if they want to deal with a paparazzi, it would be as easy as pinching an ant to death. A life and death struggle won't benefit anyone. I understand. Fortunately, Hanju was more timid than his brother. Yongjing, don't blame me for being ruthless. You and I both know how much she did to slander Tongning. Right now, I'm simply giving her an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. You won't mess it up, right? I've already sent you the money. If you lose this game of chess, then you will be suppressed by your big bro for the rest of your life. Plus, you should know that I have a second option. I can go look for your big bro. Of course I want to do it myself. But, Tongning's news will be released this afternoon. That's your own business. Hanju was silent for a moment before replying with a cold expression. I have an idea. Long Jie squinted her eyes and nodded. I'm afraid you might be up to no good. So, I will send you a high-definition photo after it appears in the news. After all, you don't need to release any crucial evidence for now. Okay. Hanju's idea was actually quite simple. Before releasing Tongning's news, he would prepare another piece of evidence. Once his big bro confirmed the contents and told him to release it, he would replace it with the evidence Long Jie had given him. That way, even if his big bro wanted to stop him, he wouldn't be able to. Instead, he would have to beg him for help. Long Jie watched as Hanju racked his brains. She couldn't help but laugh in ridicule. These were all people that had harmed Tongning, not a single one of them would be able to escape. Of course, this plan was devised by Tongning and Mo Ting. Their aim was to make all the models that had been exposed hate Yongjing. After their conversation ended, Long Jie left the remote location. There were no surveillance cameras in the area. Did Yongjing think that just because she was in a big agency and was Lan Shi's right-hand man, she could do whatever she wanted? Meeting Tongning and meeting the wife-doting Mo Ting, that was no good. An hour later, Long Jie returned to Hyatt Regency. She recounted the entire conversation with Han Ju to Tongning. It turned out, Yongjing was preparing to make a move again. Did that mean the anonymous person who warned her was also someone from Chengtian? She had no idea what their motive was. You didn't leave any evidence behind, did you? Hihi, Big Boss is too amazing. He told Lu Che to teach me a full set of precautionary measures. Don't worry, Long Jie waved her hand with a smile, hinting that Tongning was too nervous. In that case, I'll be waiting to watch the show this afternoon. Of course I'll be watching the show. Noon. Chengtian Entertainment's CEO's office. She was dressed in a white business suit as she sat at her desk. She smiled at Luo Hao. How was it? I told you to contact Tongning. Did you get any results? I've already contacted her, but Tongning seems to be planning to sign with Creative Century. She feels that although Creative Century is a small company, she has the right to speak and have the right to speak, Luo Hao replied cautiously. That's true, Tongning is an ambitious model. She doesn't like people interfering too much, she replied. Since that's the case, then forget it. Yes. President, Luo Hao let out a sigh of relief. He was the one who told Tongning about the warning. Stopping Tongning from joining Chengtian was already bad enough. If Tongning was wronged on top of that, he wouldn't be able to stand by and watch. After all, the warning had already been given. As for how Tongning wanted to deal with it, that was her problem. By the way, in a couple of days, there will be a charity dinner. I don't have a date, can you accompany me? She suddenly asked. Haven't you always disliked events like this? I have no choice, Mo Ting will be there. As you know, it's hard for me to resist the temptation of an outstanding man. She elegantly flipped her hair, looking extremely flirtatious. But, I heard Mo Ting is married. There's no way he wouldn't announce his marriage. If he doesn't announce it, then it must be a cover. Did you see the ring on his finger? So, what's the harm in going? After all, there's nothing to lose. Chapter 105. At the same time, while his brother wasn't paying attention, Hanju took advantage of the time when his brother wasn't paying attention to change his prepared article to Tongning's cheating scandal. It wasn't until the article attracted the attention of the media that Lu Xiaoqian realized the scandal his brother had released was not the article titled Evidence of Tongning's Bed Climbing. Instead, it was changed to Shocking Conspiracy, another bed climbing evidence. Hanju was smart enough not to mention Tongning. This was his agreement with Long Jie. As long as the netizens knew Tongning wasn't involved, it was fine. There was no need to push her to the edge of the storm. Inside the article, there was a large amount of evidence of Li Yu's travels as well as photos of the models he had slept with. He even changed the names of the female celebrities involved to a capital letter. Most notably, Hanju subtly mentioned that the information came from a fruit agency agent with the surname Y. This was equivalent to telling everyone that this person was Yongjing. Lu Xiaoqian was so angry that he almost smashed Hanju's computer. However, Hanju smirked at Lu Xiaoqian and provoked him. Big brother, don't be angry. If worst comes to worst, I'll give you 10% after I get the money. Who gave you the guts to do this? Lu Xiaoqian slammed his fist on the table in anger. His eyes were filled with anger like he wanted to burn Hanju alive. If you were just a little bit more fair to me, I wouldn't have treated you like this. Now, just wait for Yongjing to cause trouble for you. After speaking, Hanju threw down his keyboard and left the small studio. Lu Xiaoqian never imagined Tongning would have such a clever plan. Not only did she cause Yongjing and the models that won awards by climbing into bed to kill each other, she also completely destroyed the relationship between him and his brother. However, the press release had already been released. Even if he wanted to stop her, it was too late. He shouldn't have offended Tongning in the past. If he hadn't blackmailed Tongning, he wouldn't have ended up in this state. Not only did he not get his money, he even got himself into trouble. As soon as the news was released, the 4 models and Yongjing became the hottest topic online. Netizens began to speculate on the identities of the 5 people involved. The only person that could be confirmed was Yongjing. After all, The meaning behind the news was too strong, and she was the only manager in Chengtian with the surname Yang. Her friends all called to check on Yang Jing's situation. However, after seeing the news, Yang Jing remained silent for a long time. She stretched out her hand and adjusted her glasses. She could clearly sense that this was Tongning's counterattack, this was Tongning's revenge, at the same time it was Tongning's warning. Yang Jing turned off her computer. Originally, she had planned to leave the office, but the people in the office started pointing fingers at her and complaining. They all thought she had sold information about the bed climbing incident to the paparazzi and made a lot of money, but ended up causing trouble for the office. Yang Jing revealed a cold smile. She didn't care about the gossip. However, just as she entered the elevator, she noticed Luo Hao was about to leave. Yang Jing's lips twitched, but she didn't say a word. Reaching the basement, there were only the two of them in the elevator. The elevator doors opened with a ding-dong and Luo Hao walked behind Yang Jing. His voice was slightly cold. "I've seen too many female artists get stepped on by you and backstabbed by you. But, I never thought there would be someone like you who is even more ruthless than you. I can see that you are very proud of yourself. Don't forget, if Tongning found out you were the one who stopped her from joining Chengtian, how would she deal with you? Don't forget, if Tongning found out you were the one who stopped her from joining Chengtian, how would she deal with you? I have a feeling, from now on, you will continue to suffer at Tongning's hands." Luo Hao let out a carefree laugh. It had been a long time since he had been this relaxed, all because of Tongning's perfect counterattack. "Let's wait and see. I forgot to tell you that President Lan has already handed over the task of interviewing newcomers to me. You don't have to be in charge anymore. Although President Lan didn't say it, you've already become the target of public criticism after the bed climbing incident. The reason why President Lan asked you to be in charge of the newcomer interviews is to help you regain some of your prestige in front of the employees. This is not something you should show off," Luo Hao replied. Yang Jing finally turned around, but she was glaring at Luo Hao. However, Luo Hao opened the door and got in. He couldn't believe the insufferably arrogant Yang Jing. The Yang Jing who had always been known for her methods, had been instantly defeated by a mere model. She had no chance of fighting back. "Tongning, I really have to look at you in a different light." Hai Rui Entertainment. The CEO's office. At this moment, it was time for the employees to get off work. Mo Ting sat in his office with his eyes closed as he listened to the entertainment news regarding the bed climbing incident. From the photos and information that have been released, netizens are comparing Tongning's schedule to the one that was previously revealed. From this, we can conclude that Tongning is indeed innocent in this incident. In fact, she is the biggest victim in the bed climbing scandal. As for Tongning, we have already contacted her assistant. She has told us that as long as the truth is true, it will not be buried. It is only a matter of time before it is revealed. Tongning has also asked us to tell her fans that she is doing well and that they don't need to worry. After listening to this piece of news, Mo Ting turned off the television and lifted his eyes to look at Lu Che. "What did you just say?" "President, I just heard that the person in charge of interviewing newcomers at Chengtian is Yang Jing. If the madam is to rush in, she will definitely be humiliated." "That may not be the case." Mo Ting gently shook his head. Mo Ting gently shook his head. "Lu Che, you still don't understand Tongning well enough. Once she has set a goal, she will definitely achieve it. She would never back down in the face of Yang Jing. Even if the enemy is temporarily above her, she will never admit defeat. The president sure understands the madam," Lu Che smiled. However, the madam's counterattack this time was indeed beautiful. Yang Jing should have been dealt with a long time ago. Mo Ting's eyes lit up. Originally, he wanted to give Tongning a phone call, but Tongning called first. She sounded a little anxious. "Ting, someone from Creative Century just contacted me. The CEO of Creative Century has invited me to dinner at 7 p.m. I originally wanted to decline, but it seems they have taken Long Jie away. From the looks of it, they are trying to threaten me. They want me to go over immediately." After hearing Tongning's words, Mo Ting couldn't help but think back to the invitation from Creative Arts. They had a lot of attractive offers for Tongning, but he directly replied to them that Tongning had no plans for the time being. But now, Someone from Creative Century actually dared to play hardball in front of him. So, Ting, tonight, I will go. But I'm sure you know about their background. Can you ask Lu Che to arrange some bodyguards for me? Are bodyguards enough? Mo Ting's eyes suddenly flashed with a cold light. It was as if a bayonet was embedded in his gaze. Yes, bodyguards are enough, Tongning nodded. Okay. After Mo Ting was done, he hung up the phone and looked ahead without another word. Chapter 106. President, what happened? Lu Che noticed the coldness in Mo Ting's eyes and immediately realized something had happened to Tongning. The people from Creative Arts took Long Jie away and forced Tongning to eat with them. I'm sure they're trying to force her to sign a contract. But Creative Arts has been legal for the past few years. They wouldn't do something so despicable. Lu Che's heart skipped a beat. Thinking back, Creative Entertainment had once drugged female artists and caused them to commit suicide. This caused a huge uproar. Over the past few years, after Creative Entertainment had changed its boss, it had gradually become legal. How did they have the guts to threaten Tongning so blatantly? The depravity is still deeply rooted in their bones. In that case, do you want me to bring the madam back? Lu Che suggested. No need, I'll do it myself. After speaking, Mo Ting stood up from his chair, picked up his car keys and left the building. It wasn't that Tongning didn't know what the previous owner of Creative Arts did. But so many years had passed. Hadn't Creative Arts been operating legally for a long time and had made a lot of achievements? Why would they suddenly do something like this to her? Tongning rushed to the restaurant with complicated emotions as she mentally prepared herself. While she was in France, she had personally witnessed a woman who was also a fitting model. Because she offended a big boss with a powerful background, she ended up being drugged to death in a hotel room. In this industry, there were too many hardships. It was never as glamorous as it appeared on the outside. Tongning composed herself and reminded herself to stay calm. She wasn't alone, she still had Mo Ting. Half an hour later, Tongning arrived at her destination. However, she did not immediately enter the restaurant. Instead, she sat quietly in her car and waited. She had just sent Mo Ting an address. She thought she needed to wait for the bodyguards to arrive and ensure her safety before she dared to look for Long Jie. 10 minutes later, the bodyguards had not arrived yet, but the people from Creative Arts had already called to rush her. Tongning put down her phone and was about to make her move. However, from the darkness, a slender arm suddenly reached out and pulled her back. Tongning turned around cautiously. After realizing it was Mo Ting, she let out a sigh of relief. Why are you here? Let's go in first. Mo Ting wrapped his arm around Tongning's shoulder and hurriedly led her to the restaurant. Without even looking for a waiter, they directly found the VIP suite. The people at Creative Arts obviously did not expect Mo Ting to appear with Tongning. In reality, the fuse for this entire incident was the paparazzi, Lu Xiaoqian. He was the godson of the CEO of Creative Arts. Today, Lu Xiaoqian had suffered such a huge loss, so he had to think of a way to retaliate. As for Creative Arts, they invited Tongning over and over again, but she mercilessly rejected them all. Creative Arts already had a grudge against Tongning, so they decided to use a little trick to scare the little model. But they never expected the person accompanying her was the CEO of Hai Rui, Mo Ting. At the luxurious crystal dining table, there was only Lu Xiaoqian and the CEO of Creative Entertainment, the man known as Father Five. Mo Ting led Tongning to sit opposite them and scanned his eyes across the two men. Regardless of whether Lord Five was frightened or not, Lu Xiaoqian, his legs felt like jelly, he suspected his eyes were playing tricks on him. Otherwise, how could he possibly see Mo Ting stepping out to help Tongning? Who was she? Why did she have so much face? I never expected that by inviting Miss Tang, I would be able to see President Mo of Hai Rui. I apologize for not going out to meet you. Father Five was a 40-something-year-old man. He was thin and energetic. However, his sharp gaze kept wandering between Tongning and Mo Ting, making them feel uncomfortable. I'm sure there must be a misunderstanding. If I had known that Miss Tang and President Mo had a relationship, I would not have done something so stupid no matter how brave I was. I hope President Mo can forgive me. No wonder Miss Tang is always able to get out of trouble. It turns out, it's because she has President Mo backing her up. Mo Ting looked at the other party. That person was already famous for being a veteran in the pugilistic world. He spoke the human language and spoke the ghost language. But even so, in front of Mo Ting, he was still very respectful. After seeing Lu Xiaoqian, Tong Ning, who had been quiet the entire time, finally understood what had happened. It was her carelessness that had caused her to offend the person behind her. Mo Ting did not say a word. He simply lifted his chin and gently patted Tong Ning on the head. After quite some time, he finally said, Tong Ning and I have only known each other for 2 months. In private, we are on good terms, but we have never interacted with each other at work. She doesn't need my help, so I have never said a word to her in public. This little model is quite interesting. She doesn't want to rely on anyone to advance. So, I won't give her any help. But that doesn't mean anyone can step all over her. As Mo Ting said these words, a cold light flashed across his eyes. This kind of warning was definitely not just for show. So, I hope this is the last time. What do you say, Lord Five? Mo Ting glared at the two men. His gaze was so strong that it forced them to retreat. I don't care how you deal with other people, but you can't deal with her. Lord Five was shocked as he quickly smiled, of course. It's all my fault for not recognizing Mount Tai. If I had known earlier that Miss Tang was President Mo's friend, I would not have dared to act so recklessly. I hope you remember what you said today. Xiaoqian, hurry up and invite Miss Long out. Lu Xiaoqian was actually quite scared. He was afraid Tong Ning would tell Mo Ting about how he had tried to blackmail her. If he thought about it a little deeper, perhaps. The person that had come up with the idea behind Tong Ning was Mo Ting? Lu Xiaoqian's back suddenly broke out in a cold sweat. If he had known earlier that Tong Ning and Mo Ting had such a good relationship in private, he would not have dared to do anything to slander Tong Ning. Afterwards, Long Jie was invited out of the waiting room. In reality, she wasn't hurt in the slightest. No matter how stupid creative media was, they couldn't go back to their old ways. By the way, Tong Ning and I are quite close, but I don't want anyone to know. Don't worry, President Mo, no one will know about this. Lord Five welcomed everyone with a smile. He knew that when Mo Ting was at work, he was a lot more sinister than the man sitting in front of him. So, he didn't want to use creative media as a joke. As for Tong Ning's contract, she will not be signing with creative media. You don't need to waste your energy. Of course, Lord Five's expression was filled with flattery. Father Five's expression was one of flattery. Afterwards, he smiled at Tong Ning. Miss Tang, I'm sorry for causing you so much trouble. Tong Ning looked at Long Jie and ignored Lord Five. Mo Ting saw that she wasn't feeling good, so he didn't want to waste any more time with her. He simply stood up and led the two women away. Lord Five watched as they walked away with a deep gaze. These two sure have a strange relationship. If you say they are close, Mo Ting won't sign Tong Ning with Hai Rui. If you say they aren't close, no one has been able to convince him. Apart from this time, from now on, you need to be careful. Make sure to compensate Yongjing and don't get involved in slandering Tong Ning. Could it be that Mo Ting is actually Tong Ning's strategist? Chapter 107. Godfather, you are wrong. How could a self-righteous model like Tong Ning be interested in someone with an ordinary background? Although I don't know how she managed to get involved with Hai Rui, you can see that she has indeed benefited from it. However, for a man like Mo Ting, I don't think a little model like Tong Ning will be able to hold him down. He is the king of the entertainment industry. What woman can he not get? So look, although he has helped Tong Ning, he has also clarified his relationship with her. Just wait and see. Sooner or later, Mo Ting will get married. When that time comes, Tong Ning will fall from the clouds. When that time comes, do you think we won't have a way to deal with Tong Ning? Lu Xiaoqian calmly analyzed the situation to Father Five as he watched them leave. How can you be so sure that Mo Ting won't end up marrying Tong Ning? Mo Ting is sitting on a huge amount of resources. If he were to find someone to marry, it would definitely be the daughter of a tycoon. If he were to go down the path of a business marriage, someone like Tongning wouldn't be suitable, Lu Xiaoqian replied. Elder 5 snorted and crushed the wine glass in his hand. She doesn't even think highly of our creative century. I really want to know how ambitious she is. On the way home, it started to drizzle. After Tongning asked Long Jie if she was injured, the atmosphere in the car fell silent. Tongning turned to look at Mo Ting. She noticed he was resting against the cushion with his eyes closed. Tongning knew he was trying to hide the anger in his eyes. Tongning felt a little uncomfortable as she placed her hand on the back of Mo Ting's hand. However, he did not respond. Are you angry? Tongning asked quietly. Yes. Mo Ting didn't try to hide it. You'd rather ask me for a bodyguard than ask me for one? Do you think your bodyguards can guarantee your safety in this kind of situation? Tongning was stunned as she tightened her grip on Mo Ting's hand. I'm sorry, I didn't know I would make you so angry. But you have to listen to my explanation. Hearing the word explanation, Mo Ting finally opened his eyes. Even though he was angry, he had never thought of pushing her away or doing anything to hurt her. That was a few years ago. At the time, I was only 19 years old. I met a French girl who had been working in shows for a few years and was also a fitting model. Perhaps she wanted to be famous, so she hooked up with a designer who had a gangster background. That designer was a real pervert. He would do things that were out of line in public. He ravaged the girl on all sorts of occasions. In the end, the girl couldn't take it anymore and decided to leave the designer. However, that very night, her brother tried to save her, and was stabbed to death with a fruit knife. That girl was also drugged by the designer and never woke up again. This incident caused quite a stir in France at the time. At that time, the girl called me for help, but because I was on the runway, this incident has always made me feel guilty. So, as soon as I heard that Long Jie was in trouble, I almost lost my mind. I didn't want you to get involved because I didn't want you to become the second brother of that girl. I wasn't being careless, I was simply being too cautious. Mo Ting, I know what kind of people I'm facing. I've thought about it many times in the past. If I had received that phone call back then, would I have the courage to go and die? Later on, I understood. At that time, I may have been afraid. But now, even if I'm afraid, I will still give it my all. This is my way. Mo Ting listened quietly as she revealed the secret that had been buried in her heart for many years. In the end, he let out a sigh and held on to Tongning's hand. Firstly, I won't end up like that girl's brother because I have the power to protect you. Secondly, like you said, I know you are doing this for my own good. But I don't need this kind of good. Do you understand? Tongning froze for a moment before nodding her head in seriousness. Do you know what you did wrong now? Don't worry, there won't be a next time. Tongning raised her finger and swore. Tongning raised her finger and swore. Tonight, President Mo, you can do whatever you want with me. As long as you don't get mad at me, I can't take it anymore. Mo Ting was helpless. In reality, he didn't think he would be able to take it. Thinking about it, Tongning debuted at the age of 18 and spent a few years on her own in France. She must have experienced the darkness of the industry. With this thought, Mo Ting suddenly pulled Tongning into his embrace. From now on, if you have any secrets, you can tell me. You don't need to keep them to yourself. I can't tell you everything. Tongning replied as she lay on Mo Ting's chest. So, Tongning's professionalism was something that had gone through countless trials and tribulations. She was talented, but she was also hardworking. In that case, let's talk about one thing a day. Long Jie, who was sitting in the front seat, let out a sigh of relief after hearing the two reconciled. If it wasn't for her carelessness, today's incident wouldn't have happened. Lu Che, who was driving, glanced at her. Originally, he wanted to mock her, but seeing the bruises on her wrists, he couldn't bear it. So, he decided to just joke around. You're obviously a big shot, yet you still ended up getting caught. Long Jie, why didn't you use your advantage? Long Jie glared at Lu Che. Do you think everyone is like you? So skinny that you can only be used as a fishing rod. Tongning, who was sitting in the back seat, heard the two argue and smiled. She then lifted her head and stole a kiss from Mo Ting. Mo Ting's gaze followed her as she walked further and further away. Suddenly, he hooked his arm around her neck and, disregarding the fact that there were other people in the car, planted a passionate kiss on her lips. Tonight, she had suffered such a huge blow. Of course, she had to make it up to him. But, he obviously couldn't wait any longer. After returning home, the two couldn't wait to rush into the bedroom and tear each other's clothes apart. Seeing Tang Ning couldn't undo the buttons on his shirt, Mo Ting flipped over and pressed her against the cold wall. "Take it slow, there's no rush." Tang Ning wrapped her long and slender legs around him. Suddenly, it was Mo Ting's turn to hold his breath. Tang Ning smiled sweetly. "Now, who's the one in a rush?" Mo Ting did not say a word and couldn't be bothered to unbutton his shirt. He directly grabbed onto his shirt and pulled it down. In an instant, his muscular and smooth abs were completely revealed to Tang Ning. Tang Ning had never seen Mo Ting like this before. Her cheeks immediately turned red. Mo Ting smiled as he grabbed onto Tang Ning's chin and planted a kiss on her lips. After their session was over, the couple lay in bed. Mo Ting stretched out his arms and hugged her tightly as he lowered his head and said, "I've already signed you up for an interview with Cheng Tian. But, before that, I need you to attend a charity dinner with me." Chapter 108. Tang Ning thought for a moment and nodded her head. "I didn't receive an invitation. So what identity should I attend with? Lu Che has already prepared. 7 p.m. tomorrow. Don't be late." Tang Ning lay on Mo Ting's chest. Because of the intense activity, she was a little tired, so it didn't take long before she closed her eyes and fell asleep. Mo Ting gently stroked her back and placed a kiss on her forehead. He looked down at her eyelashes for quite some time before turning off the bedside lamp. He then hugged Tang Ning and fell asleep together. Why did Mo Ting insist on bringing Tang Ning along? It was because Cheng Tian Entertainment's CEO, Lan Shi, would also be attending. If Cheng Tian chose Yongjing for the interview, she would definitely create obstacles for Tang Ning. So, Mo Ting decided to let Tang Ning show her stance first. This way, Tang Ning wouldn't be rejected by Yongjing before her resume even reached Lan Shi. As Tang Ning's husband and her only support, Mo Ting was making the best use of him. Wherever he could create an opportunity for Tang Ning, he would make use of it. Of course, Mo Ting's thinking was correct. When Cheng Tian's HR team went through the information for the first time, they immediately discovered Tang Ning's resume. So, the staff excitedly reported this to the person in charge, Yongjing. Yongjing called Tang Ning into her office alone. In her hand was Tang Ning's resume. Beneath her jet-black glasses were a pair of cunning and calculating eyes. "Although I also feel it's a pity, Tang Ning is too old and is not within our consideration. So, even though it's cruel, let's just brush it up." As soon as the staff heard they were going to reject Tang Ning, they felt a little awkward. "Why don't we ask President Lan?" "There's no need to ask. Even if this matter reaches President Lan, the result will be the same. Don't bother her." After speaking, Yongjing tore up Tang Ning's resume and threw it into the bin. "Also, don't tell anyone about this for now. Tang Ning is currently being fought over by a few famous agencies. Since we can't accept Tang Ning, we need to save her some face, okay?" "Yes, I understand." The staff nodded her head in understanding. After listening to Yang Jing's instructions, she left the office. Even though she said this, the staff still felt Yang Jing's reasoning was a little far-fetched, but she couldn't put her finger on what was wrong. This was the last round of selection. If Tang Ning was eliminated, she would have no more chances. In this case, the staff still felt worried, so she went directly to Luo Hao's office. Seeing that he was still busy, she wanted to leave, but Luo Hao stopped her. "What's the matter?" "It's like this, Mr. Luo. I just received Tang Ning's resume, but Miss Yang rejected her because she was too old. I've seen Tang Ning's shows before, so I feel it's a pity," the man replied honestly. As soon as Luo Hao heard this, a cold smile appeared on his face. He had already guessed Yongjing would do something like this, but he never expected she would directly eliminate Tang Ning. It seemed, Tang Ning hadn't taught her enough of a lesson. However, Luo Hao had no intention of helping Tang Ning. Since Tongning was destined to meet the demon Yongjing, then he would let them fight to their heart's content. At least, if Tongning still submitted her resume despite knowing Cheng Tian had Yongjing, then there was nothing to be concerned about. So, he hesitated for a moment before replying, "What Yongjing said is right." The man obviously didn't expect this response. In the end, she accepted it. "Okay then, I will delete Tongning's resume." "Don't delete it. Since it's a normal screening, then leave it there. Tongning is indeed restricted by her age, it's not like it's some shameful process. Reply to Tongning via email and show her the respect she deserves." The man had no idea what he was planning. All she could do was smile and nod her head. Obviously, even though Yongjing had taken over the job of controlling the newcomer, she still trusted Luo Hao more. But, they would never have guessed, the person in charge of Tongning's work email was Mo Ting. As soon as Cheng Tian's reply arrived, Mo Ting, who was sitting in his office, saw it. As expected, Tongning was rejected. The reason she rejected was because Tongning was too old and was no longer within Cheng Tian's consideration range. Mo Ting looked at the computer screen and couldn't help but laugh. No matter how stupid Lan Shi was, there was no way she would reject Tongning. This was obviously Yang Jing's doing behind the scenes. Because of this, he wanted Tongning to attend the charity dinner. Tongning had submitted her resume to Cheng Tian, so Lan Shi naturally had to know. Afterwards, Mo Ting gave Tongning a phone call and told her to look at the email herself. After seeing the reason she was rejected, Tongning couldn't help but reveal a mocking expression. "This is the last round of submissions. She was rejected, so she didn't even get a chance to go for an interview. Lan Shi will also be attending the charity dinner tonight." Hearing this, Tongning suddenly laughed. "President Mo, you always say you'll wait for me to grow up, but in reality, you're always worried about my manager. Wait until you have a manager. Let's see if I still care about you." "Of course I will." Tongning refused to believe that he would be willing to let her go. "Watch me suffer." "You won't be able to." Mo Ting smiled as he rubbed his forehead helplessly. "Head out early tonight. Don't be late." "Okay." After replying, Tongning hung up the phone and fell into deep thought. Was Lan Shi going to be there too? Firstly, she needed to think of a way to get hold of Lan Shi's personal contact details. Since Yongjing was going to be rejected, she had no choice but to contact Lan Shi. Even though Lan Shi might not respond to her, she still had to give it a try. She couldn't just give up like this. 6 p.m. Tongning was dressed to the nines. She and Long Jie headed to the location that Mo Ting had told them beforehand and entered the venue like a newcomer. At the same time, Creative Century's Father 5 was also invited. He walked behind Tongning. Seeing this little model soar into the sky, he couldn't accept it. In reality, most of the guests that were invited were successful entrepreneurs and philanthropists. There were very few actors and singers, let alone a model like Tongning. Because most of the guests had a strong background, there were even more rich heiresses present. They all had their eyes on Mo Ting, so they were willing to put up with such a boring event. Lan Shi arrived at the venue accompanied by Luo Hao. Although Tongning kept a low profile, Luo Hao was still able to spot her as soon as he saw her sitting in her seat. As expected, she couldn't possibly endure Yang Jing's pressure. However, Luo Hao was curious. What method would she use to strike up a conversation with Lan Shi? Also, where was the Mo Ting that everyone was looking forward to sitting? Chapter 109. In reality, the seating arrangements for the charity gala were divided by industry. As for the people from the entertainment industry, they were arranged to sit in the second row. Mo Ting's seat was the first one on the left. Between them was a pianist, followed by Tongning. Looking around, Tongning was the only woman closest to him and the only one close to him. Tongning looked past the pianist and towards Mo Ting's seat. He was still on his way, and on Tongning's right was Lan Shi's name. When Luo Hao and Lan Shi entered the venue, he obviously didn't expect Tongning to be sitting right next to Lan Shi. So, he subconsciously suggested swapping seats with Lan Shi, trying to stand between them. But, if he really swapped seats, the person next to Lan Shi would be Father 5. At the time, He had already told Lan Shi that Tongning was ready to sign a contract with Creative Entertainment. If Lan Shi and Father Five were to exchange pleasantries, she would know he was trying to stop Tongning from entering Chengtian. But, choosing the lesser of two evils, Luo Hao still swapped seats with Lan Shi. In reality, if you wanted to stop someone that couldn't be helped, it was fine after playing with your schemes, there was no need to feel guilty. But, Tongning. Luo Hao snuck a glance at Tongning. This was the first time he had been so close to her, but he felt she was even more difficult to read than Lan Shi. Her facial expression was flawless and her mannerisms made it impossible to see through her. It seemed, she was afraid of being hurt in this industry, that's why she was so careful and cautious. She was too quiet and appeared aloof from the world. But, Luo Hao was well aware that for someone with a high EQ, they had to know how to manage their emotions. In this aspect, Tongning was undoubtedly doing a great job. Not long after, the charity gala was filled with noise and screams. As Mo Ting entered the venue, he naturally attracted the attention of a group of girls. However, he was cold towards everyone around him as he quickly made his way to his seat. It was only when he walked past Tongning that he slowed down and brushed the back of his hand against hers. Tongning did not say a word, nor did she deliberately look at him. However, her heart raced, there was no doubt about it. But, she immediately laughed at herself for being silly. He was obviously her husband, yet she felt like she had just won the lottery. She still felt like she was floating in the air and was in a dream. But, he was obviously her husband. After all, there were so many eyes looking at him. Afterwards, Mo Ting sat down in front of everyone. Lan Shi turned her head and glanced at Mo Ting. Who would have thought Mo Ting would notice? In order to hide her panic, Lan Shi immediately patted Tongning on the arm and pretended to greet her. Seeing Lan Shi like this, Luo Hao, who had been passed by, started to panic. As expected, he couldn't lie, otherwise, he would really have a guilty conscience. Tongning turned to look at Lan Shi and smiled. President Lan, nice to meet you. Last time at the awards ceremony, I already noticed you. Unfortunately, we weren't fated to be together. Although I feel regretful, I still wish you the best. Just as she was about to ask, Luo Hao, who was sandwiched between the two of them, immediately said, President Lan, let's talk in a bit. It's about to start. Tongning lifted her head and glanced at the man. She didn't know why, but she had a feeling he was trying to hide something. Afterwards, she thought back to the anonymous email Cheng Tian had sent her to warn her about being hacked. That tone was very similar to this man, but at this moment, he was clearly trying to stop something. Whether he was a friend or foe, it was hard to determine. So, Tongning did not explain to Lan Shi. She simply smiled and turned her gaze back to the stage. The host had already started speaking. Luo Hao let out a sigh of relief. If Tongning exposed him and said she didn't receive an invitation from Cheng Tian, it would be hard for him to get out of this situation. So, he needed to think of a way to get Tongning to leave. Not long after, the auction began. Tongning watched as Mo Ting raised his paddle multiple times. She understood, as the number one person in the entertainment industry, he had a mission and responsibility to fulfill. Luo Hao's gaze remained on Tongning. He really wanted to know what she was thinking at this moment. But, no matter what she was thinking, he had to get rid of her to prevent an even more uncontrollable situation from happening. So, he pretended to knock over the bottle of water that the staff had prepared and pointed it at Tongning. As a result, a large amount of water splashed onto Tongning's white dress. Tongning felt a chill as the area below her knees was instantly drenched by the cold water. Most importantly, a chiffon dress like this, as soon as it was wet, would reveal her skin. It was extremely indecent. Sorry. Miss Tongning, I've soaked your dress. Luo Hao immediately apologized. Tongning knew Luo Hao did this on purpose, but she did not get angry. She simply shook her head, it's fine. However, it was already October and Tongning was wearing thin clothes. Coupled with the fact that her dress was wet from the cold water, she couldn't help but shiver a little as she subconsciously rubbed her arms. At this time, the pianist on the left nudged her on the shoulder and handed her a black jacket. Tongning glanced at the jacket and immediately looked at Mo Ting. She realized he was only wearing a white shirt and the jacket was in the hands of the pianist. He did not hand it over himself to avoid arousing suspicion. As Tongning received the jacket, she felt a sense of warmth in her heart. Soon, looks of envy from all around her. That was Mo Ting's jacket. So many people wanted to touch it but never had the chance. Yet, at this moment, it was in Tongning's arms. As expected, only her husband knew how to dote on her. Tongning hugged the jacket and placed it on her lap. She then sent a message to Long Jie, who was waiting outside, reminding her to buy a new dress so she could change into it later. Luo Hao looked at Tongning holding onto Mo Ting's jacket and felt he had gone a little overboard. Just a moment ago, he had wanted to take off his jacket, but at the same time, he wanted to force Tongning to leave. Luckily, Tongning did not try to strike up a conversation with Lan Shi. Luo Hao let out a sigh of relief, but he was also a little disappointed. Logically speaking, Tongning shouldn't have wasted her time like this. Not long after, the charity dinner came to an end. Lan Shi went to the bathroom and Tongning finally took the opportunity to speak to Luo Hao. You can stop me this time, but can you stop me forever? Luo Hao was stunned. He didn't expect Tongning to be so direct. I feel you and Yongjing are different. Luo Hao was stunned for a few seconds before he decided to tell Tongning the truth. Previously, President Lan did ask me to contact you and sign you on, but I didn't follow her instructions. The reason I did it tonight wasn't because I was afraid of being exposed, it was because I didn't want to do it in such an embarrassing situation. I don't want to explain why I did it, but even if it wasn't me, it would have been someone else. You have blocked too many people's paths. Chapter 110. So, you rejected my resume? Tongning was angry on the inside, but on the outside, she remained calm. Yongjing and I are not the same kind of people, but I am aware of this incident. Your age does not meet the requirements, so you were rejected. This is in line with the company's rules. Luo Hao tried his best to explain calmly. Tongning, you have already left Tianyi. This means you will be entering a more competitive agency. You want a good team, but so do others. So, I don't think I've done anything wrong. Of course, I can't wait for you to come up with a beautiful counterattack. This is the entertainment industry. Your position determines your situation. After hearing Luo Hao's words, Tongning laughed. Her laugh confused Luo Hao. On the surface, you don't seem to be the same kind of person as Yongjing. In reality, for the sake of your own selfish desires, you sacrificed my chance to enter Chengtian. You don't need to apologize, but I don't think you should say this out loud. Yongjing is worldly, she likes to play tricks behind people's backs, but she knows her place while you. It's like holding a knife and stabbing an innocent person, yet saying I did it to help you reach paradise. You should be thanking me. I am simply doing what God wants me to do, I am not in the wrong. After hearing this, Luo Hao wanted to refute, but as the words reached his mouth, he realized he had no confidence. You better continue to block my path. Otherwise, I'm sure you've heard that I am quite vengeful. Luo Hao was stunned. All of a sudden, he was speechless. He suddenly realized, blocking Tongning wasn't as simple as a wrong decision. Most importantly, Tongning wasn't someone that would give others the chance to turn back. So, he had no choice but to continue working with Yongjing. Luo Hao calmed down for a moment and did not continue his conversation with Tongning. Not long after, the large hall was filled with guests. However, Mo Ting did not move either. He never liked crowds, so it was normal for him to leave. As for Tongning, it was inconvenient for her to do so. So, no one suspected their relationship apart from Father Five. After Lan Shi exited the hall, Luo Hao went to the car park to get his car while Father Five stood beside Lan Shi. Although they weren't close, they still had a few words to say. Father Five, congratulations on signing Tongning. Father Five turned his head. With a smile on his face, there was a deep meaning in his eyes. Tongning did not sign a contract with me. Lan Shi froze for a moment. Her expression was the same as Tongning's. She was a little confused. At this time, Father Five added, a model like Tongning would never be interested in a small agency like mine. She rejected us 3 times in a row. Lan Shi suddenly remembered Luo Hao's words. He said Tongning had rejected her and agreed to sign with Creative Entertainment. I'll be leaving first. Seeing Lan Shi's confused expression, Father Five did not probe any further. After his car arrived, he left with his assistant. Not long after, Luo Hao's car also drove out. Lan Shi opened the door and got in. Her face was gloomy, but Luo Hao did not notice. Luo Hao, contact Tongning again and try to convince her to join our agency. But, Boss Lan, she has already decided to sign with Creative Media. Lan Shi glanced at Luo Hao through the rearview mirror. She did not say a word, but her eyes were filled with disappointment. It wasn't like she didn't know about Yang Jing's little tricks. Originally, she had placed all her hopes on Luo Hao. But, she never expected, this right-hand man was even better at lying to her than Yang Jing. By this time, all the guests had left the venue. Only Mo Ting, Tongning, and the cleaning staff remained. Mo Ting lifted his head and glanced at Tongning. He did not say a word as he walked over to her and wrapped her tightly in his jacket. Tongning felt a sense of warmth as she slowly calmed down. She and Mo Ting left the venue one after the other. After boarding the car, Tongning couldn't help but ask Long Jie for a change of clothes. What happened? Long Jie asked as she looked at Tongning's soaked dress. Not long after, Mo Ting boarded the car in a secluded area and chased Long Jie over to Lu Che's car. Seeing Tongning was still wearing a wet dress, he was a little unhappy. Why haven't you changed? There were too many people on the street just now. I was afraid of being photographed. Look at the situation. Why are you still worried about being photographed? Mo Ting rolled up the car window and wrapped his jacket around her. Hurry and change. Tongning removed her dress and put on a comfortable new set of clothes. However, her limbs were still cold. So, Mo Ting rubbed them with his hands. Why didn't you ask Lan Shi? Because I realized, apart from Yang Jing, there was another person who was trying to stop me from entering Chengtian. I'm guessing his relationship with Yang Jing isn't simple. If I had gone to look for President Lan, I might have been stopped by this man. So, I didn't want to make a move in front of him, Tongning explained with concern. This man is called Luo Hao. If we are talking about being a manager, he is indeed very capable. He is Lan Shi's right-hand man. After speaking, Mo Ting put down his hands and pulled Tongning into his embrace. I won't let him bully you for no reason. Tongning let out a gentle okay. She was already a little tired. Thinking about how she had been drenched in water and how Mo Ting had only handed her a set of clothes, Tongning knew, in this world, the only person she could trust and rely on was Mo Ting. Only he would provide her with warmth at a time like this. Hubby. I'm sorry, I wasted such a good opportunity. If I had known you would be frozen like this, I definitely wouldn't have let you come. Tongning smiled as she found a more comfortable position in Mo Ting's embrace and rested her head on it. Meanwhile, Lan Shi returned home and gave her secretary a phone call. Help me check Tongning's contact details. 5 minutes later, her secretary called. Lan Shi picked up. President, I just found Tongning's resume on a colleague's computer in the HR department. She wanted to come for an interview, but it seems she was rejected by Yongjing Jie. The reason was that her age didn't meet the company's requirements. All that could be heard was a loud bang. Lan Shi slammed her hands on the desk. Obviously, she was quite angry. These two were way out of control. They actually colluded with each other to lie to her. Don't let Yang Jing and Luo Hao find out I found Tongning's resume, okay? Okay, President. Send me Tongning's contact details. No wonder Luo Hao insisted on swapping seats with her at night. No wonder when she mentioned wishing Tongning well, Tongning's expression was blank. It was time to teach these two a lesson. Otherwise, they would just ignore her, the CEO. So, Lan Shi personally gave Tongning a phone call. Hello Tongning, I am the CEO of Chengtian Entertainment. I have a suggestion. I wonder if you are interested. Chapter 111. Lan Shi actually personally called her and said she wanted to sign her to Chengtian Entertainment. Personally, although Tongning tried her best to remain calm, she was still a little surprised. President Lan. Tongning, I'm sorry. Actually, After you terminated your contract with Tianyi, I already had the intention to sign you. But, when I heard you wanted to sign with Creative Entertainment, I regretfully gave up on the idea. However, tonight, when I spoke to Father Five, he told me you have no intention of signing with Creative Entertainment. In that case, are you willing to come to Chengtian? Before Tongning could reply, Lan Shi smiled and swallowed the words she was about to say. I've already seen your resume. My staff didn't do their job well, I hope you don't take offense. It seemed, Lan Shi already knew Yongjing had done something behind her back. Thank you, President Lan. Let's meet up tomorrow, okay? I would like to invite you to lunch. After hanging up the phone, Tongning still felt a little surreal. Thinking about Luo Hao's guilty conscience, she guessed Lan Shi must have given Luo Hao the task of contacting her, but Luo Hao did not follow her instructions. Coupled with the fact that she had submitted her resume, she had been stopped twice. It seemed like Father Five had helped her out by accident. Thinking of this, Tongning suddenly felt Luo Hao and Yongjing didn't end up well. Although Lan Shi was a woman, for her to be able to get Cheng Tian to where it was today, she definitely had some tricks up her sleeve. But Luo Hao and Yongjing actually treated her like an idiot and kept her in the dark. Lan Shi's status as CEO was threatened and challenged. Something good happened. After his shower, Mo Ting walked out of the bathroom to find Tongning standing by the window. Her warm body pressed against his as he leaned over and placed his head on her shoulder. I can sign with Cheng Tian. Tongning turned around and wrapped her arms around Mo Ting's neck. Lan Shi personally called me. From the looks of it, she didn't want Yongjing and Yongjing to know about signing me. At this point, Tongning explained the entire situation to Mo Ting in detail. Mo Ting was the person that understood Lan Shi's feelings the best. It was okay for his subordinates to do dirty things and seek personal gain, but they couldn't let him know about it and definitely couldn't let him see it. Otherwise, this matter must be dealt with seriously, even if this person was his right-hand man. After entering Cheng Tian, Lan Shi will definitely assign a manager to you. When that time comes, do you plan to tell her about our relationship? That depends on whether that person is worth it. By the way, if I have a new management team, you won't have to work so hard. I don't want you to be like you were a few days ago, so tired that you had a fever and didn't let me know. Mo Ting gently stroked her hair and placed a kiss on her forehead. That was an accident. Plus, even if you have a new management team, I will still personally look through all your information. Not everyone is like me all the time. Like you what? Like how I wish you well. Tongning smiled sweetly as she stood on her tiptoes and placed a kiss on Mo Ting's lips. However, Mo Ting took the opportunity to wrap his arms around her waist, deepening their entanglement as he whispered beside her ear, "Actually, I really don't want to let you go. After you go to Cheng Tian, our time together will decrease." Tongning hooked her arms around Mo Ting's neck as her cheeks flushed red. "President Mo, why do I sense a hint of fear in your voice?" Mo Ting's words weren't unreasonable. After Tongning signed with Cheng Tian, her free time would decrease. On top of that, there would be more people keeping an eye on her. She wouldn't be able to do whatever she wanted like she did now. But Tongning did not respond. She couldn't be bothered to make any promises. No matter what heights she wanted to reach, she knew her motivation to work hard was so she could stand on the same level as Mo Ting. If she neglected Mo Ting because she was busy, then she would lose the original purpose of doing what she was doing. It would be like putting the cart before the horse. Above all, in her heart, Mo Ting was number one. No matter what happened in the future, no matter how the future turned out, she had already made a vow that as long as it was related to Mo Ting, no matter how big or small, she would treat it as the most important thing. Mo Ting's fear did not receive any response from Tongning, so he immediately bent over and lifted her in his arms, placing her on the bed. "I want a sense of security, wifey." "In that case, what do you want to do to feel safe?" Tongning gently raised her eyebrows. "Of course. I want to become one with you." In reality, Tongning was feeling extremely uneasy. Joining a big agency was something to be excited about, but it also came with its own challenges. Right in front of her were Yongjing and Luo Hao. The next morning. Cheng Tian Entertainment. Early in the morning, Yongjing had already organized for the models to arrive for auditions. As Lan-shi stepped out of the door, she saw Yongjing busy with work. She seemed to have thought of something as she approached her and said, "We originally planned to sign a contract of 5 people. You only need to choose 4 more. I have already made arrangements for the last spot." Yongjing froze for a moment before nodding her head. "Understood, President." Lan-shi patted her on the shoulder, reminding her to continue working hard. However, her eyes were filled with a sense of mockery. Yongjing had already turned her head away, so she had no way of seeing Lan-shi's actions. Nor did she know, Lan-shi was heading out to sign the person she had tried so hard to prevent from joining Cheng Tian. Lan-shi's authority as CEO had been seriously challenged. She naturally had to think of a way to teach Yongjing and Luo Hao a lesson. How dare they stand in the way of the person she wanted? She was going to let Yongjing and Luo Hao interview the others first so they would think she had given up on Tongning. She was going to wait until the contract signing ceremony and let Tongning appear on stage to suppress their arrogance. The 10 a.m. sun was no longer as gentle as it was in the early morning. However, the weather was accompanied by a cool breeze that made people feel refreshed. Tongning and Lan-shi arrived on time. The two hit it off as soon as they met. They chatted for the entire afternoon in the cafe. Tongning was 3 years younger than Lan-shi, so she had once seen Lan-shi on a show. At that time, Lan-shi was quite famous in the modeling industry. But, who would have thought, she would end up working behind the scenes. "Tongning, in 2 days' time, a friend of mine will be hosting a show. I want you to be the opening act. You've rested long enough. However, don't tell anyone about our contract signing for now. Once you join, I will definitely prepare a grand ceremony for you. When the time comes, there will be a good show." "Okay," Tongning nodded. Chapter 112. Tongning didn't know what Lan-shi was planning, but she guessed it had something to do with Yongjing and Luo Hao. "After this incident, I will arrange for the best manager for you, don't worry." Tongning had a slight smile on her face the entire time. She indeed needed a capable manager, but Lan-shi planned to keep it a secret until the end. She did not arrange for an immediate meeting with Tongning and did not even tell her who the manager was. In reality, Lan-shi had arranged for Tongning to attend this show because firstly, she wanted to confirm her abilities. Secondly, she wanted to arrange for Yongjing to bring along the newcomers to see the difference between them and Tongning. Of course, Tongning and Yongjing had no way of knowing what she was planning. All these years, she had placed too much trust in Yongjing and Luo Hao. That was why they were so brave. Since that was the case, she wanted to make them understand that losing a model like Tongning was equivalent to losing all the luck they had in their lives. The setting sun was like a shadow as it slowly disappeared through the floor-to-ceiling windows. During the auditions, it was inevitable that Yongjing would meet with Luo Hao. Just before the end of work, Yongjing finally called Luo Hao over for a chat in her office. "Thank you for not letting President Lan find out about Tongning. But, once Tongning finds out..." Luo Hao paused for a moment as he leaned against the edge of his desk. "We've tried to stop her time and time again, so she will definitely think of another way. She's not someone that gives up easily." Yongjing thought for a moment before looking at Luo Hao in seriousness. "As long as we work together, Tongning won't have the chance to get in. I can't handle President Lan on my own, so I need your help. Can you still pull me up from the edge of the cliff like before?" "Pull you up? Are you going to push me down again?" Luo Hao asked coldly. His tone was filled with ridicule. "You may be able to forget how you stabbed me in the back, but I will never forget. I will never believe a word you say again." Yongjing paused for a moment, her words stuck in her throat. She nodded her head in defeat and adjusted her glasses. After President Lan returned this afternoon, she locked herself in her office and made a phone call. "I heard from her secretary that President Lan wants Enzi Hao to come back. In terms of ability, if you and I work together, we will barely be able to beat Enzi Hao. Although because of what happened in the past, he no longer works as a manager, it doesn't mean he will forever be satisfied with being a bystander. Even if he comes back, he'll be a cripple." Luo Hao wasn't worried about Enzi Hao at all. In fact, he was more concerned about Yongjing's interview. "Did you find any good candidates today?" "A few." "In that case, Let's polish her up and divert President Lan's attention away from Tongning. Little did they know, Tongning had already officially signed with Cheng Tian. She had personally delivered the contract to Cheng Tian. Of course, she wouldn't mistreat Tongning. After all, she had been a model before, so she knew what Tongning needed the most and what she lacked. Because news of Tongning's signing had not been announced, the public were extremely curious as to where she was going. But Tongning kept too low a profile and lived in a place like Hyatt Regency, so it was impossible for the paparazzi to find a chance to take photos. So, only a few people knew about her. At the same time, StarAge finally released an official announcement. Lan Yu had officially joined StarAge and was working under the title Tongning Jr. In the end, this 16-year-old girl won the favor of StarAge and successfully took the contract with them. As a result, the public's attention towards Tongning grew even louder. Even her substitute had found a new owner. When would she make a move? From the looks of it, Lan Yu does look quite similar to you. If it was night time, it would be hard to tell you apart. Long Jie's words made Tongning, who was watching the interview, pause. If even Long Jie couldn't differentiate between the two, then if something went wrong with Lan Yu, she would be the one to blame. By the way, Tongning seems to be very curious as to where you will be signing. It's a pity we can't announce that you have already signed with Cheng Tian. We can't let Yongjing and someone else be shocked. Tongning glanced at Long Jie and smiled helplessly. It wasn't that she wasn't going to get revenge, it was simply that it wasn't time yet. On the television, Lan Yu sat calmly on the sofa, accepting the interview with a childish expression. When the reporter asked, "Everyone says you are a mini Tongning and thinks you have been using Tongning to create hype. Do you have anything to say about this?" Lan Yu's manager subconsciously looked at Lan Yu, reminding her not to speak carelessly. However, Lan Yu thought for a moment and decided to answer honestly, "I think when I reach Tongning's age, I will definitely be better than her." Soon after, a line of words appeared on the screen. Mini Tongning publicly challenges Tongning, believes she is better than Tongning and wishes her senior the best in finding a new owner. As soon as Long Jie saw this, she was a little angry. However, Tongning reached out her hand and held her back. "You're getting impatient just because of this. She is waiting for you to respond to her. Go create hype for her and help her make a wedding dress. Are you going to go or not?" Long Jie froze for a moment and fell silent. For a 16-year-old child to say something like this, others might think she is immature. But, do you think I can act like I'm immature? I just need to mind my own business. It wasn't that Tongning didn't mind, but someone was using her to create hype. Logically speaking, she had created value for the industry. Plus, Cheng Tian was going to announce the news sooner or later. What was the rush? That night, Mo Ting returned home from Hai Rui. Seeing Tongning lying on the sofa in the living room waiting for him to finish work, he couldn't bear to see her like this. "Why aren't you sleeping in the bedroom?" Tongning sat up and shook her head. "When I'm at home, I want to personally wait for you and watch you return home. Ting, tomorrow night, I will be replacing President Lan on the runway. So, I will use the opportunity to wait for you to return home in advance." Mo Ting wrapped his arms around Tongning's head and placed her head on his lap so she could sleep more comfortably. "It's okay, I won't be home so early tomorrow anyway." "Huh?" Tongning looked at Mo Ting questioningly. "Tomorrow night, I happen to have some time to watch my wife walk on the runway. In other words, you will be going too?" Tongning was a little excited. How she wished she could see Mo Ting while she was at work. Even if she was on stage, it would only be a few short minutes. Mo Ting let out a gentle grunt as he leaned over and placed a kiss on Tongning's rose-like lips. It seemed, no matter how much he kissed her, he couldn't get enough. "As long as it's something you want to do, then go ahead and do it. I will accompany you. It's that simple." Chapter 113. After hearing Mo Ting's words, Tongning smiled warmly. He was right. Sometimes, liking someone was as simple as that. As long as you wanted to do something, I would accompany you. If you knew what was most important to you, all you had to do was give it your all. "Have you eaten? I'll get the maids to prepare it." You still have work tomorrow, go get some rest. Mo Ting pulled her up from the sofa. The show is tomorrow night, there's no need to rush, Tongning said as she nudged Mo Ting. Go have a shower, I'll prepare it for you. It'll be ready soon. Mo Ting didn't know what to do with her. He didn't want to crush her enthusiasm, but he still reminded, be careful not to burn yourself. President Mo, you seem to treat me like a child. Don't take away the joy of being a wife from me. Mo Ting looked at her helplessly. Although Tongning appeared invulnerable on the outside, in front of him, she was like a child. In the end, Mo Ting gave in and went into the bedroom to have a shower. After he quickly cleaned himself up and returned to the dining room, he found a bowl of fragrant noodles on the dining table. Tongning had already pulled out a chair for him. Mo Ting's chest swelled up. This simple happiness was extremely precious. No matter how much money he had, no matter how much power he had, it couldn't compare to someone he cared about cooking a bowl of fragrant noodles for him. You don't like it? Mo Ting shook his head as he sat down on the chair and ate happily. Tongning sat beside him and asked, apart from work, I don't see you doing anything else for entertainment. My free time is only enough for me to watch one movie, Mo Ting replied in a low voice. Then, let's watch it together after dinner. We can watch it at home anyway. Tongning suggested. Let me tell you first, what I like doesn't necessarily mean you will. What's wrong with that? In reality, Tongning was applying what she had learned on the spot. Mo Ting's I'm going to accompany you actually touched her a lot. Previously, Mo Ting had been by her side, so now, she wanted to understand him a little more. After dinner, Tongning kept her promise and insisted on watching a movie with Mo Ting. Mo Ting thought she would fall asleep, but, contrary to his expectations, she watched the movie intently from start to finish. Every now and then, the couple would whisper a few words about the plot. It was a great feeling. At least, they both wanted to integrate into each other's world. The next morning, before Tongning woke up, she received a phone call from Lan Shi. Tongning, how are you today? If you have something to say, please get straight to the point. Tongning smiled. She didn't like to beat around the bush. For royalties show tonight, I'll get Yongjing to bring the newcomers that have just been interviewed to watch and learn from them. You might bump into them. Hearing this, Tongning realized Lan Shi was giving her a chance to slap Yongjing in the face, so that she could get rid of the hostility she had towards Yongjing. After a moment of silence, Tongning made a promise, President Lan, I don't like to cause trouble. But, as long as Miss Yang knows her place, I will. Since I'm giving you this chance, you should make good use of it. The reason why Lan Shi did this was because she felt Yongjing had done too many tricks behind her back. As for Cheng Tian, there weren't many people that could make Yongjing suffer. If he got Tongning to make a move, he would be doing her a favor and he would be able to teach Yongjing a lesson. Why not? Tongning hated the feeling of being used by others. Over the years, she had paid for this feeling too many times. So, President Lan, don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Lan Shi was satisfied. Tongning knew when to advance and when to retreat. So, she was glad she signed Tongning to Cheng Tian. But, Tongning simply wanted to walk the royalty show to the best of her abilities. As long as Yongjing didn't go overboard. 3 p.m. Seeing it was still early, Tongning asked Long Jie to drive to a place near Hai Rui. She wanted to personally pick Mo Ting up from work. The couple sat in the car listening to the radio. Coincidentally, they heard news about Lan Yu. Long Jie subconsciously changed the channel. Tongning, are we going to continue to tolerate Lan Yu? She's using the name Little Tongning to act recklessly. Long Jie felt it was unfair. Little Tongning isn't Tongning. Isn't there a little in front of it? Even if she gets rid of that little, she still won't become me. Tongning didn't seem to care about Lan Yu. But, Long Jie, she's simply using the name Little Tongning. She hasn't done anything to me. Am I supposed to cause trouble for her because of a nickname? That doesn't make sense. Tongning shook her head. I've already said this countless times. It's not that I don't want revenge, it's that it's not time yet. Long Jie stuck out her tongue and did not say another word. Although she liked to complain, she wasn't a reckless person. She knew Tongning had her own plans, these people simply hadn't made a move yet. But, as long as Lan Yu made a move, Tongning would not let down her enemy's provocation. This was the attitude she had since her comeback. After arriving downstairs at Hai Rui, Tongning gave Mo Ting a phone call. "President Mo, can you return my husband to me now?" Mo Ting couldn't help but smile as he looked at the time. "It's only 3 p.m. Isn't it too early to get off work? Didn't we agree to meet at the show? But I want to pick you up from work and have dinner with you first." "Are you at home?" "I'm downstairs at your office," Tongning replied in a low voice. "Give me 5 minutes." Tongning smiled and hung up the phone. Seeing the expression on her face, Long Jie couldn't help but turn her head and say, "Did you know you've been smiling a lot lately? Not too long ago, because of that jerk Han Yufan, I thought I'd have to face the cold and lonely Tongning for the rest of my life." At the mention of Han Yufan's name, Tongning was a little surprised. Meanwhile, Long Jie slapped herself in the mouth. "Who asked you to speak such nonsense?" Tongning lowered her head disapprovingly. It didn't take long before Mo Ting found their car and boarded it. "Why are you here all of a sudden? If I didn't come, would you have eaten some of the office's unhealthy food again?" Mo Ting naturally wrapped his arm around her and smiled. "It's not that serious. To be honest, I'm not sure either. I just suddenly felt like doing this, so I came." "Ting, sometimes, my overcautious and hesitant attitude makes you feel uncomfortable, doesn't it?" Mo Ting knew Tongning was being overly cautious about their relationship. "Don't worry, from now on, I will relax a little and trust you a little more." Mo Ting gently rubbed her shoulder without saying a word. He knew Tongning was being cautious because she didn't want too much trouble. It was just, sometimes, when he could have stepped in, Tongning insisted on dealing with things on her own. This made him feel like he wasn't needed. It turned out, it wasn't that she didn't understand, she even explained it to him. So, in a place where Tongning couldn't see, Mo Ting couldn't help but smile. This smile made Long Jie, who was looking at Mo Ting through the rearview mirror, feel a little dizzy. He was too handsome. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.